Hi. Welcome back from lunch, everybody. For those of you attending online, I hope you had something fun from your kitchen or your break room. For those of you in person, our lunch was terrific. You can be jealous, that's fine. So, a personal history for me is our next presenter, Dan Trolero. I actually met him my very first Kentucky Council on Problem Gambling Education Conference that I attended as a Masters of Social Work student. And that was also the same conference that I was then admitted into the board of problem gambling with the Kentucky Council. And then about 2 years later, I run into Dan again in Washington, D.C. for the National Council. And then we've kind of circled paths throughout because a lot of the things that he and I both heavily advocate for are based in the area of prevention. Since then, Dan has successfully started and then moved into a different company. He started with Epic, and now he's with IC360, which I'll let him kind of explain more about that. But his topics today will be both looking beyond what we traditionally look at as sports gambling, specifically as sports gambling and sports betting becomes more mainstream, we're starting to see more harms towards those emerging adults. That's ages 18 to 25, based on those risks of digital accessibility and increased targeted marketing. So the next two workshops that Dan is going to be leading for you all attending here will be focusing on the psychological, social, and environmental drivers of gambling behavior among college students. And then again at 3 o'clock, we're going to add in how the history and culture of gambling in the state of Kentucky can exacerbate and make individuals more vulnerable and at risk for that targeting. Those of you that are attending online, as a reminder, please click open chat panel in live chat and put your name in so that we know that you're here. That way you can get credit. If you do have questions, by all means, ask them. We want to make sure you get the due deference as well, because you're attending this just like anybody else. Other than that, I will hand it off to Dan.
Great. Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you. Welcome to everybody online, and welcome to everyone in the room here today. I don't know how many we have online, but please use the chat. It's always important for any workshop that we take something away that we can apply personally, professionally, something that we can just apply, something we learn different, those nuggets. What's that nugget? What's that takeaway? For the folks in the room at the end of the session today, we're going to wrap up a little early. I'm going to give you some time back to kind of decompress before the final session. But at the end, I'm going to be asking you, what did you take away? What was something you learned new? What was something you heard different? Maybe what was something you never really thought of before? So just kind of put that in the back of your mind so later on when I ask you, it's not a big surprise. And it doesn't have to be a long thing. It can be 10 words or less, whatever you're comfortable with. But let me understand first who's in the room. So just let me have your name and who you work with. Go ahead.
I'm Renee Moore, and I'm with Hoskins Medical Center. We're in Eastern Kentucky, and I'm a substance abuse professional, and
Great.
I counsel athletes who are struggling.
Excellent. Substance abuse professional, hospital counseling athletes. So I appreciate that. I'm going to repeat some of that so the folks online know as well. How about yourself?
I'm David Brummett with the Kentucky Overdose Response Effort, so I'm a state agency representative.
Excellent. Overdose. So drug and alcohol primarily, and it's so important that if we're looking at substance use, we also have to look at the non-substance related disorders like gambling. So thank you for being here.
Hey, my name is Lindsay. I work with Local Recovery Community Connection. I'm also a licensed therapist and I work with all different populations.
Awesome. Licensed therapists, recovery community, all different populations. Excellent. Thank you. Are you seeing younger people coming in for counseling and therapy now?
I have been seeing an influx of about 18 to 23, 4 years.
18 to 23. I just realized today, I think I knew this, but I forgot. And then when I was sitting in the morning session, that the sports betting legal age in Kentucky is 18.
Yeah.
And you know, it's only one of 6 or 7 states around the country where it's 18. And I know there's a pending bill looking to make, I'm from New Jersey, it's 21 plus. And that's what I'm accustomed to. And brain development's not until mid-late 20s anyway, so 18's really early. So thank you for being here. How about you?
My name is Cynthia Turner, and I am the Prevention Site Administrator at Four Rivers Behavioral Health. So we typically focus on substance misuse and suicide prevention, but I'm currently overseeing a grant through the Kentucky Department of Behavioral Health on problem gambling.
Great.
So we're trying to add that more into the conversation.
Excellent. Behavioral health, primarily focused on substance misuse and suicide. And we know that gambling and gambling disorder, as the DSM-5 notes, gambling disorder has some of the highest rates of suicide ideation, attempt, and completion. And so we have to be talking about that with other things, because that will co-occur with mood disorder, anxiety, generalized anxiety disorder, bipolar, depression. And whether it's the chicken or the egg, does the gambling cause the behavioral health or the mental health issues? Or did the mental health and behavioral health exacerbate and make the gambling worse? We don't know. And sometimes it's not that important. It's just to know that they all exist in this ecosystem. So thank you for being here. How about you?
I'm Shannon Stamper. I'm a licensed clinician in Kentucky. I work in elementary school. I work in my office some, so kind of looking at prevention and trying to look for resources for that.
Great.
And how to help these kids. So many are on the games, playing video games. I feel like they're kind of getting accustomed to what that looks like.
Yeah.
Or as they grow older. So it's a concern I have for kids.
Licensed clinician, elementary school, obviously concerns in the school system and early onset, right? So primary prevention, trying to get it as early as possible. I mean, right now in the United States, we don't talk about gambling in the high schools. So to get it into the middle school and the elementary school, forget that. And the first time they're hearing about gambling is sometimes in college. And I'll tell you my background in a little bit, but when I was in New Jersey, I worked at 800 Gambler. I was the assistant executive director there for years. And I went into a 5th grade classroom one time, and there was this young man, maybe 10 years old or so, sitting in the front row with no sneakers on. And I said, my friend, where'd your sneakers go? He said he lost them. I said, well, let me help you find them. He goes, no, I lost them shooting dice in the bathroom. 10 years old, shooting dice in the bathroom. And there's a kid in the back of the room that had a smile on his face holding the kid's sneakers. I said, will you please give them back to him right now? And he did. But I said, this is a problem, 10 years old. And we know what happens now digitally with Roblox. We talked about that. Social casino games, social games. I was on a flight to Chicago one time. The mom handed her small child who was 4 the smartphone, and the child was playing a Bible-based slot machine game. So if you matched up like 3 Noah's Arks, you got like coins. It was all based on themes of the books of the Bible. I'm like, oh my goodness gracious, what's happening here? So we see it all the time. So thank you for being here. How about you, my friend?
I'm Curtis Barrett. I'm a retired professor from U of L Psychiatry and Behavioral Science and department, and I founded the Kentucky Council and I worked quite closely with Arnie Wexler and others, and with the the New Jersey Council.
Wow.
And I'm retired these days and enjoying it.
Well, I'm thankful that you're in this session, and that's, you know what, that deserves a round of applause. Thank you for that. Thank you. Arnie's a close friend, and I was at his anniversary celebration a few years back, his 50th, in New Jersey when we honored him. Wow. And so you've seen a lot, and I've spent each of the last 4 years at University of Louisville working with the student athletes and coaches and staff. As a matter of fact, we just had an incident at University of Louisville a couple weeks ago where you had somebody from Texas threatening Miller Moss, Brom, the coach, their wives, their girlfriends, and thankfully this guy was brought to justice. They found out who he was, and he was threatening and harassing athletes because he lost $65,000 on a mid-November Louisville Cal game. And that's kind of some of what we'll talk about today, too, of how gambling has changed so much since, I'm sure, when you were actively a professor and working at Louisville, too. So thank you for being here. I really appreciate that. How about for you in the back? I sat next to you in the morning session.
Yes. My name's Brian, and I worked at Rooted Recovery with Dr. Clark, and primarily substance use, some behavioral health. And I just do like utilization review, insurance,
Okay.
authorizations, but I am back in school working with Dr. Clark.
Good.
I came to this one last year in Florence.
Excellent. So working with Dr. Clark, utilization review for insurance. So are we seeing gambling getting approved by insurance as a primary with that diagnostic code, or does it still typically come along as a secondary?
Primarily, lately it's a secondary.
Still, we see that too. It's hard to get the diagnostic code as a primary. It usually has to accompany like a mood disorder or something else, and then gambling comes alongside. So it's just interesting to see how insurance coding and how it's kind of being treated and covered and paid for. So thank you for that. And last but not least, you came in. We're just looking for the name and who you're here with.
Sure, my name is Megan Matthews. I'm with North Key Community Care out of Covington, Kentucky.
Covington, northern part, right? Right by University of Cincinnati.
Yes.
Yes, okay, I stayed up in Covington. I did some work with the Cincinnati Bearcats.
Okay.
So it's good to have you here. Thank you so
Nice
much.
to be here. I actually was raised in the Mammoth Cave area, so I'm familiar with the BG.
Awesome, all the BG, awesome. Well, my name's Dan Trolero, and this is my first time to the BG. So I'm born and raised in New Jersey. I have 3 kids, twins that are 20 years old. They're in college. My daughter dances at University of Pittsburgh, and my son was on a full-ride baseball scholarship at University of Maine, D1, until he tore his ACL his freshman year, and now he's coming back from injury, and he's playing community college ball to get his stats up so he can find his next performance at whatever school that'll be next year. My youngest daughter's a dancer. She's 15. And it's so funny. I think about sports and dance. Sports teaches you that you can fail every so often and still have a good career. You can still have a good game. A pitcher can walk a batter, a hitter can strike out. They can still have a good game. But dance is a whole different animal. If you fail once or make a mistake once in dance, you've just ruined it for your solo or for your team competition. And so both of them present unique challenges. That perfectionism attitude versus, hey, I'm going to minimize my loss because I'm so used to it in sports. So when I'm sitting at the blackjack table, I lost a hand. What's the big deal? I'll just win the next one. And so athletes tend to chase losses more often than any other population. And we're going to talk some about that. The reason I do the work that I do is I started my journey of recovery on February 11th of 2010. So I'm 16 years now. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you. 16 years in recovery, and it is a journey. I was in Kentucky at the last conference. It was right before COVID hit. It was 2020. And I was there, and I actually got COVID when I came back from that conference. And I remember going through the airport at that time, and even at the conference, people were coughing and hacking up a lung. And I came back, and I lost taste within 3 days. So I'm not blaming the Kentucky Conference. It was just traveling at that time. I guess I should have worn the mask. But as a gambler in recovery, I take chances. That's just in my DNA. So I didn't wear a mask. But 16 years in recovery. My background, I grew up in a house where gambling was normal. My mom had left when I was 2 years old. And so my father raised my brother and myself. My mom had emotional issues. She had stuff that she didn't know how to deal with, and so she left. And so growing up in a German household, I didn't grow up in a very warm and fuzzy, loving environment. Everything was a handshake. Everything was, nobody cares how you feel, figure it out and move on. So that's kind of how I was raised. But my dad also, he liked to drink and he liked to gamble. So it was normalized at an early age for me. As I'm going through school, I was an athlete. I played baseball. I was a lefty pitcher throwing around 94 as a junior in high school. So scouted by East Carolina, NC State, and Tennessee, the Philadelphia Phillies, and the Cincinnati Reds. So I had tremendous potential and a lot of prospect, but I was the definition of bad talent. You see, I was good talent on paper. If you looked at my stats, they said, wow, this person's going to go somewhere. But then if you talked to me, I had a bad attitude. I was 17. I knew everything. You couldn't tell me anything. And the Philly scout gave up trying. And so he stepped away. He was trying to caution me about my arm, my delivery, my mechanics. I ended up with a partially torn rotator cuff, ulnar nerve damage, and a wrist issue. Fast forward, I get through college. I go to play Division III baseball. I didn't last very long. My arm gave out. But I was still competitive. I was a risk taker by trade, a type A personality. And so I got my major in finance, minor in economics. I graduated. I got my first job working in New York City at Goldman Sachs, investment banking. And so for me, that was fast-paced, high intensity. I loved it. Competitive, working with some of the best. Unfortunately, life changed. While I was married on June 16, 2001, that was a positive. 3 months later, September 11th happened. And on September 11th, I was downtown that day. And without getting into too many graphic details, I saw way too much. That when I look backwards, that was probably the first prison I was ever in was mental prison. Because at the age of 25, going through that experience, watching the plane hit the towers, watching people jumping out of windows, everything that I saw, and losing 14 friends that day, 2 of them were in my wedding, and losing 2 more friends to suicide a month later, it set me up for disaster. And I didn't talk about it with anyone because mental health in 2001, we didn't talk about it like we do today. And so I started using gambling as my escape pod. because my dad and I would go to the racetrack together. So for me, it was normalized at an early age. It was a fun time with Dad. It was, hey, let's bond over this. It was social. It was easy. Just like today, it's culturally around us, it's socially around us. That's fine. But it's not fine the way we're seeing it kind of unfold now with technology. And that's the big thing that I didn't have back when I was young. So my dad reinforced it. So September 11th happens. I start gambling and playing blackjack every day. That was my safety. I would just escape into a cocoon, and I'd just play blackjack for a while. I'd bet on sports for a while. The problem is it got progressively worse because gambling, like drugs and alcohol, is progressive in nature. Started thinking about it, doing it, betting increasing amounts of money. Everything started revolving around gambling. And so I leave Goldman Sachs. I joined Prudential as a financial planner. I've now got a growing gambling problem, and I'm in charge of your money. This is not good. We can laugh about this a little bit. We have to laugh sometimes. And so I started making a lot of bad decisions. Because I had access and I had availability, and I was in a position of financial expertise and knowledge with other people, they started trusting me, and I stole their trust, I stole their money, I stole their safety, their security, and I ended up embezzling over $2.1 million from my company and from my clients. And I was caught. I was caught February 11th of 2010, and that's the day that my journey of recovery started. Now, the day that I was caught was the day I lost my job. It's the day that my now ex-wife found out about my gambling. I admitted to everything I had done. Prudential reimbursed all the victims of my crime financially, made them whole. But then I had a prison sentence I had to deal with. So that was the second prison I was locked in. So mental prison, now physical prison. And I had a 6-year prison sentence in the state of New Jersey. I served 4 of my 6 years in the system. And that was medium security, minimum security, a work farm, supervised release, halfway house. As they like to say, all different levels of care, right? Care is a term used loosely there. And so while I was away, I realized that, had a couple of revelations. I suck at life, and I don't know why I'm so screwed up. Neither of which is good self-talk, mind you. I understand that. But at the moment, that's not what I was thinking about. I was just being in my head, I've got to do better. If I want to be a father, if I want to be a good person for my family, in community, I need to do better. And so I went back, I started working on some emotional awareness within myself, started dealing with my mom's stuff, which I had always avoided. And then I went back and got my master's in psychology because I really needed to understand how this thing works. And it started giving me some perspective. It started freeing me up a little bit. I started reconnecting with my faith, got back into my church. I started giving myself a little bit of grace. And all these things I started getting back. I started getting my life back. I rediscovered my joy. I had lost my joy for so many years. I had shame and guilt. Couldn't look in a mirror. But I finally started getting that back. And I realized my purpose is to try to help other people and let people understand that whatever your relationship with gambling is, it is. But understand what healthy relationships look like and understand what unhealthy relationships look like. We do it for drugs, we do it for alcohol, we do it for stranger danger, we do it for technology use, but we don't do it enough for gambling. And so fast forward to today, for the last 10 years I've been in this space, speaking around the country. With IC360, we're a global sports betting integrity monitoring company. It's a lot of words. So when you see 2 Cleveland Guardians pitchers get suspended from baseball because they were intentionally throwing pitches out of the strike zone, cheating the game of baseball, our company is the one that found that. We identify illegal or irregular betting patterns, and we'll report it to the MLB, we'll report it to the Cleveland Guardians, and we work with the NCAA, we work with the Olympic Committee, the NFL, Major League Soccer, emerging sports, the UFC. And so we work to keep sports betting safe from an integrity perspective. My role is education. We talk to the athletes, work with the athletes directly. I'm on the back end of a 2-week road trip. I was just at a spring training in Arizona, worked with 9 clubs over the last 12 days, on top of flying back across the country to speak at the PA conference, East and West. And so I've been all around the country, 9,000 miles flown in the last 13 days. It's been a long trip, but education is something I believe in. And it's something we need to heighten awareness on. In New Jersey, we just launched a pilot program for high school. It gives teachers the tools to educate their students about gambling. I'm not an educator by trade. Teachers do what they do best. The teachers are teachers. They do education really well. I know prevention and I know gambling inside and out, so we put together digital platform and access so that teachers have the tools to help educate the kids. And we already have over 30 high schools registered in New Jersey. At 1,000 people per high school, that's 30,000 people that now have access free of charge to gambling, and it's probability, it's odds, it's randomness, how the games work, video gaming. A lot of these things is what we see as early onset and early use. So that's a little bit about me. I'm glad I learned a little bit about you. Let's get into what we're talking about. Sports betting has shifted. It's not on the sidelines anymore. It's in the middle of sports media. Today is March Madness. The games have tipped off. I mean, it's what, 1:55 here, so 2:55 East. So the games are going to be going all day till midnight. It's one of the days that employers do not like because productivity goes way down. People call out sick. People are taking long lunches. You know, I'm sure this room would be packed to the walls if it wasn't for March Madness. Yeah, exactly. Game started at 11:50, I think, Eastern today, right? Oh, oh, UK plays tomorrow. What time?
I think it's like
11:15 UK. Okay. Yeah, and Louisville's playing right now, I think, right? Oh my goodness gracious. Okay, we'll have to get a score check later on. And no one's betting on the game in here, right? Or are you? I mean, that's fine. You're all of legal age. That's the one thing is when I realize, for me, I don't have a healthy relationship with gambling. That's the way I'll always say it. It's not healthy for me. If I was gambling, I wouldn't be here right now. I would have made up some stupid excuse. Oh, I'm sick. I have laryngitis. I can't talk. Can't be there. No. I know gambling's unhealthy for me. It was an abusive relationship, if I could use that terminology. And I don't mean to be disrespectful, but for me, it kicked the shit out of me, excuse my language, in the corner. And then I would come back and try to be a father, a worker, a spouse, a husband, a brother, a friend. But yet I'd be craving that thing that just beat the hell out of me. And I could not reconcile that. In my brain, I always thought I was smart enough to know better. But my heart, my stomach, my body, none of it. I mean, it just didn't feel good. My physiological response to gambling was insane. I would just, there's a video, I believe, I don't know if I'm showing it in this one, it might be another one. There's a video that talks about the brain, what happens in the brain. And when somebody gambles, they put this individual inside an MRI machine, and they look to see what was happening in his brain. And Ron Solin, did you ever see the one? It was on YouTube. And it's what they determine is they watch his brain and how it gets activated. And what they conclude is that it's not just the winning. So when people gamble, it's not just the winning that matters. It's the taking part and the taking part repeatedly. So it's the anticipation and the participation. That is just as activating to a person as winning itself.
And an almost win.
And an almost win. The near miss is also a near win. It's how we frame it and how we think about it. That's just as deadly. One of the worst things that can happen to somebody at an early age also is winning big. You know, we see that all the time. When I was in high school, I was not involved with the good crowd in high school. I was already gambling in high school. I was involved with some organized crime activity. I wasn't breaking legs or putting holes in tires, but I was collecting sports betting tickets. And I was giving them off to my friend whose father was running an illegal gambling ring. He was a bookie. And so I saw no problem with this because they would give me a little bit of money here and there. They'd buy me something. I was like, this is great. Fantastic. Well, one time I actually bet with the father, and I did a parlay. So I picked 10 sports college football games, and I did it was called a round robin parlay. So I picked 10 games, but I had to combine them 8 different ways. So there's all these different combinations of which 8. I ended up going 10 for 10. I won every single game. So every bet I had won. I won $22,000 that weekend as a 17-year-old. And I'll tell you, I chased that the rest of my days into adulthood. Because it's not the money. I wasn't chasing the money. I was chasing that feeling. The brain produces dopamine. It doesn't care how we get it. It doesn't care if you hit a home run. It doesn't care if you just sang on stage and it felt good, if you completed a piece of artwork. The brain just knows, produce a chemical. And if it makes you feel good. For me, gambling was that thing that made me feel good. Striking out a pitcher on a 3-2 count in the bottom of the 7th to win a game, yes. When my injury hit and I couldn't do that anymore, I had a void I had to fill. And we see that with athlete vulnerability is athletes have that void. You work with athletes, right? Some of the trainers that I talk to, they get the most information from their athletes. Because when they're on the training table, when they're getting iced down, ankle wrapped, stretching, whatever it is, they got time. They're on their phones. They're placing bets. They're playing online gambling. New Jersey has online casinos. I could play blackjack 24 hours a day if I wasn't self-excluded. So it's all around us all the time, and it makes it very difficult. So emerging adults, that's the area that we look at. We're going to look at what some of those vulnerability factors are. We'll talk about relationships, and we'll talk about resources. 18 to 25, important age. I guess I have college kids. Transition. Anytime there's transition in life, it's a vulnerable spot to be in. So if someone's married and they lose a spouse, that's transition. Moving to a new city or a state, that's transition. Going off to college for the first time, transition. Graduating college, right? Any of these, having a baby, buying a house, getting married, these are all major life events. And for some people, they don't know how to cope with that. So maybe they don't have coping skills, maybe they're just not good at it. So some people will choose to escape and do something else while they're navigating this. Alcohol is a popular choice, but guess what? Gambling is becoming an increasingly popular choice. Because then you don't have any smell. You're not using drugs, you're not drinking excessively, and so gambling, what's the harm? Let me put $50 on the game, let me just forget about it, let me play blackjack for a while. So this is what we're starting to look at, these transition times. And also, it becomes a little bit of an issue because if we think about brain development, I think at the age of 21, it's a good idea to have 3 hot dogs at 2 in the morning after a night of drinking. But when I'm 50 years old, that's one of the worst things I could do to myself. So I don't know if that's brain development or just experience through life. But you're risk taking. That prefrontal cortex, that decision-making piece is not all there yet. And that is a fundamental concept. And so sometimes when we ask someone who's younger, what were you thinking? Did you think this through? Biologically speaking, they may not fully be equipped to think everything through because they're not fully there yet. There's some elements, people say, well, it's common sense. Common sense is relative. There's no such thing as common sense. It's relative. And so, yeah, there's a biological component. That's what makes this so dangerous because the way games are marketed today, they're marketing to an 18 to 35 age range. So this is a subset within that where you're trying to discern. Discernment is a skill that comes over time. Wisdom. We have wisdom in the room sitting right there. Thank you for being here. We have wisdom. Wisdom comes with years of experience. Wisdom doesn't come from the age of 21. So that comes from making mistakes and learning and gaining perspective. This is where we have to help educate at an earlier age so we can help people avoid pitfalls and understand how games work. Let me ask you a question. How many of you have ever played roulette? I love that hand, it shot right up. How many colors on a traditional roulette table are there?
Red, black, and green.
Okay, 3. Excellent. I was in a high school back before COVID, 2019. I was working at the New Jersey Council, and I did 3 high schools in a week, and all 3 of these kids must have been so out because I said, okay, roulette. They're like, oh, it's 2 colors, red or black. Roulette's the best odds. It's 50-50. I'm like, you're wrong, man. He goes, no, I'm not. He goes, you're not too good at what you do. You don't even know what a roulette table is. I'm like, I'm pretty sure I do. And some games now have 0, 00, 000. They even shifted it more in favor of the house, right? But the green is what shifts it into the house's favor. Because if you have 18 red, 18 black, that would be 18 out of 36. That's 50-50. But when you have 2 other numbers or colors, that's now 18 out of 38, which is 9 out of 19, which gives you a 45.45% chance of winning, which means the house has 54.55%. That's house edge. And that's why Jeremy was asking numbers. I love numbers. I was a gambler. I loved numbers. I still love numbers to this day. So roulette is not the best odds at 50-50. The point of that is that a lot of people don't understand how games work. Another example. If you have a 1 in 100 chance of getting a really rare digital item in a video game, like you're opening up this pack and you have a 1 in 100 chance, the first 99 you've opened, you haven't received that rare item. Are you guaranteed to get the item on the next one? Why not?
It's still 1 out of 100.
It's still 1 out of 100. It has no memory of the previous pack. Well said, thank you. Random number generation, RNG, is how all games are made. And so what high school, what teens don't understand is they'll invest, that key word, $100 to get this rare item. Every time they open the pack, it's always 1 out of 100. It doesn't have any memory of what happened the first 99 times. These are some of those stinking thinking, the cognitive distortions, the mind traps that people fall into. And some of it is just you just don't understand how the game works. That's what we're trying to help educate. Before you start to gamble, you should know how the product works. Did anyone ever remember the product, the Rotato, on the Home Shopping Network? Years ago, 25 years ago, late at night, I came home from the bar, 1 in the morning, didn't have a hot dog that day, but I thought it'd be a good idea to buy the Rotato instead, okay? So I probably had a couple of beers in me, and I see this product that says you can now peel a potato from home, like an apple peeler. This is for potatoes. I'm like, this is great. I love mashed potatoes. This will make life a lot easier. So I buy the Rotato. They gave me an extra one for free. So it was a buy one, get one free. I take it out of the box. I don't read the instructions. Throw it away. I don't need it. It's easy. Put the potato in and turn the wheel. I put a potato in there, a large Idaho potato. I take one turn of the plastic handle and it snaps off. Rotato ruined. I'm like, damn. So I get the other one. I was like, well, good thing they sent me a second one. I got a slightly smaller potato, but still way too big. 2 turns around, the handle snaps off. Money out the window. Rotato done. I then go back and look at the instruction manual. Do not put a potato bigger than this size on it. Had I read the instructions and understood how the product worked, I wouldn't have had that issue. It's a silly example to say that today, our youth and emerging teens are doing things because of hearsay, because of what their friends are doing, what they're seeing them do, and they're not taking the time to fully understand, what is this product? How does it work? And is it healthy for me? Making healthy, informed choices. What if that individual has a family member who struggles with gambling addiction? How many of you in this room have ever known someone who has a gambling problem? Yeah. And whether it's family or friends or something, that individual now has a history. There's a biology. There's a genetic component to that. You know, gambling addiction is multifaceted, bio, psycho, social, lots of components. But what I encourage every person is go home and ask about your history. Understand where you come from. What makes you you? What makes you uniquely valuable? The good, the bad, and the ugly, all the things. What comprises Dan? Right? Who am I? What am I made of? If I would have done some of that work, I would have realized my dad had a gambling problem and a drinking problem. His father had a drinking problem and a gambling problem. The biology. So now having kids of my own, I made damn sure I wasn't taking my son to the racetrack. I made sure that I didn't talk about gambling with him in a tone that was always positive. He knows what happened. We have a very open dialogue today, and he knows to be very careful with it because we talk about it. That's what we have to do. We have to encourage conversation. It's okay to struggle. It's okay to have these conversations. That's what family's about. We talked about the developing brain, the prefrontal cortex, the amygdala, highly active, really experiences a lot of emotion and reward. Speaking specifically about athletes, I was just down with the Kansas City Royals last week. They brought me in to do a different type of workshop that really centers on Major League Baseball players, unique vulnerabilities, personality traits. And what I realized is that when I'm thinking about this, athletes have like that 10-second memory. Remember Ted Lasso? The happiest animal on the planet's the goldfish because it has a relatively short memory. Whether or not that's true, scientists have debated that. But the point is that to be successful in sports, you need to have a short memory. You need to know, once again, that, yeah, I struck out. That's okay, I'm going to get up again. Oh, I swung and missed at that pitch. There's another pitch coming in 20 seconds. But you don't leave personality traits on the field. You bring them with you. They're entwined. They're who you are. And so now when I go down to the casino and I'm playing blackjack and the dealer just beat me, well, that's okay. I'm going to get another hand in 20 seconds. Athletes tend to minimize those losses. And that's the thing. They minimize the loss because they're conditioned to fail. Athletes are also taught that practice makes them better. That's why when you're working with D1 athletes at Louisville, at Kentucky, no matter where I am around the New York Yankees, practice has gotten you to this point. Yes, you have a genetic skill set. You've got a little bit of luck on your side too. Sometimes it takes a little bit of luck, lack of injury. But practice is what's gotten you here. You think practicing sports betting is going to get you better? You think practicing drinking will get you better? Your tolerance will improve. You'll have liver damage, but I mean, that's fine if that's what you want. But practice is not what happens. So you've been conditioned to fail, then that's okay. You've been conditioned to know practice gets you better. You know that you're a risk taker already. Athletes are risk takers. They're also conditioned to know that they're going to feel good, they're going to get a reward in the brain, and when they lose, they're going to chase losses. So athletes are a unique subset, and their brain works just a little bit differently. Nationally speaking, we know that right now, that's from the NCPG, I believe, 75% of students had gambled within the past year. I think the number's higher than that. That's reported. And so that's college age. NCAA puts out stats. The numbers are consistently between 52 and, say, 85%. It's something that's done in the classroom with your friends across the country, and that we know it's the accessibility and the frequency. Those are the things that matter. It's highly accessible. You start partaking in it on a regular basis. It becomes your escape from life and from stress. It's integrated culturally. When we watch a game, we're getting to the point now, I was on the phone with some Amazon AWS workers, some of their executives. They're getting to a point where they see a world where you're watching a Thursday night football game on Amazon Prime, and you can touch the player, and a betting lines would pop up when you touch the player. So imagine like you're watching the Giants play the Eagles, and Saquon Barkley's on the field, and you can touch Saquon Barkley right on your smartphone or on your laptop, whatever you're watching it, and with that will come an integrated gambling line. And so will Saquon Barkley get a first down? Will he run for more than 10 yards on the next play? This is how quick things are happening. It's integrated into our technology. That's scary. When I was at Buffalo Wild Wings, when I came back from that Kentucky conference before COVID, watching the Super Bowl, people were just on their smartphones in New Jersey, just betting on the game. They weren't even watching the game. They were watching it through their phone. They don't even watch the game anymore. And so we're starting to see more of that. Prop bets, that's a concern. We're seeing more and more people betting on individual player performance. And with that, when someone loses, they feel empowered to send a threatening message that we talked about before. Even Venmo requests. Hey, you cost me $50. Here's my Venmo. Send me the money. Like, no, I'm not going to do that. So we start to see more and more of that. I was in Villanova Labor Day weekend last year, and one of the girls on the basketball team pulled me aside and wanted to talk with me afterwards. And she said she was playing a basketball game in January of 25 against Paige Beckers. Paige Beckers is a very popular college basketball, female basketball player. And this girl was going for a loose ball. Paige Beckers was going for the loose ball, and the girl from Villanova dove on the ground, took out Paige's leg, and injured her for the game. Paige ended up with an injury. Paige has a massive social following. And so this girl from Villanova started getting death threats, harassment, intimidation, things that say, we know what your class I know what your class schedule is. I'll be waiting outside. I'm going to take your leg out the same way you took out Paige's. I know where your parents live. I'm going to put a brick through their window. And you start seeing this harassment. This girl shared with me the screenshots and the photos. It was still happening into August, 8 months later. And I said, have you told anybody about it? She said, no, it really wasn't bothering me. I just thought it was noise. But lately it's bothering me more. I said, have the threats changed or has your life circumstance changed? She says, I'm getting ready to graduate because she's on a half year. She goes, I'm starting to get stressed about the next transition and phase of my life. So the threats are still coming in, and they've been coming in, but now it's bothering me differently. It's almost like that drip you have in your sink at home. It doesn't bother you most days. You know it's there. It drips. Okay. But on a day that you're having a bad day at work or a bad day with family or a friend or a spouse, that drip is louder. The drip didn't change. It's your response to the drip that changed. And so this girl was getting these threats, so we pointed her in the right direction. We made sure that she has the support that she deserves, because we don't want anything to ever live up here. What I tell athletes all the time, if you're not good up here, you can't be great out there, because this thing is so critical to keep clear. And with gambling and threats and harassment and all the pressures that our young and emerging adults have on themselves, I mean, there's so much pressure they have. Now they get extra pressure from people threatening them or saying, you cost me money. We just don't need that. You know, we don't need that. So it's all around our culture and society. Social drivers of betting. Gambling is a way to bond socially. We don't want to be left out in the cold. If I'm a teammate, I don't want people to do something that I'm not doing. I want to be a part of it. Iowa and Iowa State had a massive gambling scandal a few years ago where 35 people from the wrestling team, the football team at those two colleges were busted for gambling. They were using parent accounts. They had friends setting up accounts that they were betting through. But one gentleman in particular, college kid who's actually going to the draft this year, I became friends with, he gave us some content through his NIL partnership. He had never gambled. He didn't grow up in a family of gambling. He grew up in a family of law enforcement officers. And so he got swept up in it because his friends were doing it. So he'd put $5 here, $5 there. He was betting on Iowa State athletics. Prohibited, can't do it. And then he was sharing information with other people, can't do it. And so he got jammed up with that. It was a way for him to bond because he didn't want to feel like he was missing out. And it's still that FOMO is still part of culture and society. We know that young people and athletes in particular, sensation-seeking, competitive, overconfident, and emotional impulsivity. So there's lots going on here. Question, when you say you work with some athletes, let me just take a pause for a second here. Let's just collect ourselves. What I'm talking about with athletes, does anything sound new, same, different? Any thoughts that you have, that you've seen? Anything that I'm saying that resonates?
Yeah, it all resonates. You know, I'm from Eastern Kentucky, and I work with athletes that either couldn't transition, that had a lot of hype in high school.
Yes.
Went to their first semester, couldn't make it, went to Division I, came from families that had a lot of expectation, a lot of legacy players. It's very, very difficult.
Yeah. So, and just for the people online, you know, we're talking about working with athletes, and these are athletes who had a lot of great potential, a lot of hype, but just never could cross that line to get to the next level. And now all of a sudden, they still have those competitive tendencies and that feeling and that drive, but it starts to create issues in their life. Drugs, alcohol, gambling. Yeah.
A lot of it is that it was their way out.
Yeah.
And then they see their friends that had support. It wasn't, poverty or not having a lot of resources. You know, they couldn't, afford the travel ball stuff, and they're lost.
Yeah.
And don't know.
You make a good point. Poverty.
Never made Plan B, and they end up in my office because they either got a DUI, word of mouth that I'm good with sports therapy, and so I kind of got a following.
That's
of
good.
All these
That's
young
good.
kids, and I come from a family, and I was an athlete that had a lot of success, and
Peer-to-peer matters.
yeah.
Peer-to-peer matters. There was an athlete at University of Louisville, and I won't say what team at all, and I won't say what year. I've worked with Louisville each of the last 4 years. Love working with the athletics department there. This young man came up to me and said, "Hey, can I talk to you for a second? I want to run something past you." He says, I don't gamble on sports. He goes, I don't want to lose my scholarship. He goes, I just want to put that out there right there. He goes, but I'm struggling. I said, well, tell me what's happening. He said, I sit in the back of my bio class where I have a C- average right now, and I'm in danger of failing the class, which would then ruin my academic eligibility for the coming year. He goes, but I just keep day trading. He goes, I'm buying cryptocurrency, I'm buying stocks, I'm flipping stocks. He said, I had a situation last week where I lost $3,700 in 35 minutes. $3,700 in 35 minutes. He then went late from class. He had failed his test, lost the money, showed up to practice late. Coach said, get the hell out of here. You're late for practice. Come back tomorrow. Be on time. And on time means 5 minutes early, okay? So now, bad grades, lost money, late to practice. He goes back to the parking lot, gets in his car, gets a speeding ticket, doing 45 and a 15. Almost hit a pedestrian. You could have killed that person. So what he asked me, he says, do you think I have a problem? And I said, that's not fair for me to, it's not fair for me to pass judgment, and I never want to say, yeah, you have a problem. I said, I think you're asking me the question because I think there's some areas of your life that you feel as if you have some questions about. And I said, I would encourage you to go talk to somebody. Use the resources that Louisville has on campus to help get a good answer. I'm not equipped to answer that question, but the 5 things that we just identified in this story, collectively, yeah, I think there's something going on there that you probably want to talk to somebody about. You know, what's going on at the deeper level? You know, sometimes when people struggle with their alcohol or gambling, that's not their problem. For me, gambling was the solution to my problem. My problem stemmed a lot deeper. I had PTSD from September 11th. I had unresolved issues with my mom from childhood. ACEs are a big issue. And so I never worked on any of that stuff. I had emotional issues. I had a bunch of issues. So for me, gambling was the solution. What's the song by Midland? Country song. People say I've got a drinking problem. I got no problem drinking at all, right? They call it a problem. I call it a solution, right? Chris Stapleton has a line in one of his songs, I drink because I'm lonesome because I drink. So it isolates us. It keeps us in the corner. It's the solution to a deeper issue. That's why when I talk about addiction, I talk about the disease of addiction. Take the word disease and break it into two parts. What is not at ease? What is the dis-ease within each and every one of us? We all have it. There's something. No areas of our life. What's the 8 dimensions of wellness? They're not all 8 for 8 at all times. If they are, great. Doesn't always last for long if it is, okay? There's just something right around the corner, right? And so just what is not at ease? And then what are we doing to deal with that? What coping mechanism? Is it a healthy coping mechanism or is it an unhealthy coping mechanism? And that's kind of where we keep coming back to relationships. You know, what is that relationship with nutrition, with sleep, with alcohol, with sex, with work, with gambling, whatever it is? And helping people understand that when they had so much potential. This was their plan. Their identity was rooted in their athletic performance. And that's the big issue. They are so much more than just being an athlete. That's why when I see the word gambler, I don't say I'm a problem gambler. I had a problematic relationship with gambling, the activity of gambling. Gambler is my identity. I'm far more than that. I'm a person with a gambling problem. I'm a person who had a gambling problem. And I think when we talk to people in recovery and we're talking and trying to build people up, I'm a believer in that mindset. I know some other people, I've been to GA rooms in my life, 16 years in recovery. I was in GA for the first 10 of them. And it would be, hey, I'm a degenerate gambler. Okay, that's the language you want to use, that's fine. I can't stop anyone from using the language that they want to use. I will just never refer to myself that way, because I'm more about trying to build people up. Compassion over comparison. I'm a big believer of we lead with compassion, not comparison. And that's what I see we need a lot of as we're working in this space, is letting people know that you're more than just your identity is being rooted in sports. What makes gambling so tricky to give up? For me, I think gambling is one of the hardest harm reduction addictions to come back from. And the only reason I say is because, you're conditioned to know every so often you're going to win. So here's a question. How many of you in here have ever gambled and won more than $500 at one time? How much did you win? $27,000. How did it feel?
Great, and I've never bet another dime since then.
I love it. I love that reaction because, it felt good, but it wasn't like, I can't wait to go back.
It was on the Kentucky Derby. It was when the long shot was 50-1, and I just on a whim. There was no real thought to it. It was just really a whim.
Just a whim.
And I won that much money, and I decided that I would always stay ahead because it would be all losses.
You understand that you just happened to get lucky on that particular day. There's people who, when I won that, when I was in high school and I went 10 for 10, I chased that feeling because in my brain said, I'm really good at this. I have a skill and a knack of picking the winner. No, I don't. I got lucky that day. And so I would charge my friends. They would say, who you betting on this weekend? I'd say, give me $20 and I'll tell you. And they would lose every week. So I didn't keep a lot of friends all the time in high school. And so that was my mindset, though, is that I always tried to take it and say, I play sports, I watch sports, I have an advanced knowledge or skill set, because people see sports betting as skill-based gambling. I have college kids that will say, I don't gamble, I just bet on sports. I'm like, wait a second, that is gambling. They're like, yeah, but it's not real gambling. I actually know what I'm doing. It's not like I'm sitting at the slot machine and just pulling a handle or pushing a button. That's random. Me, I'm good at it. Really? How you doing this year? Well, and then their friends will chime in. I had to lend them $100 last week. All of a sudden, people don't win as much as they say they do. And so that's part of the concern that we see. But gambling does tell us that we're going to win every so often. Our brains are conditioned to know that. The problem is threefold. You don't know how much you're going to win, how often it's going to happen, or when it's going to happen next. And so people who call a helpline will say, listen, I was gambling. I lost money. It's really more of a money problem. It's not a gambling problem. You know, if I had more money, I wouldn't have had to have called you, right? Because my next win was right around the corner. It's been black on the roulette table 10 straight times, and I kept doubling on red, and I just ran out of money, and then red hit on the 11th one. If I would have had a little more money, I would have been good. Nah, no, you wouldn't have. No, that's just not how life works.
I just wanted to share some. So I do various things, and I had this group of women for 15 months. I was doing this National Institute of Health study for a supplement to help control cravings.
Yeah.
And they were all women.
And acetylcysteine?
Yeah, in a NAC.
Yeah.
So they were in recovery with their substances, and we would do our check-ins, and then I discovered they were all gambling. So these women, between online lottery, scratch-offs,
Yeah.
and sports betting,
Yep.
and that was when Kentucky opened up
Yep.
to sports betting.
Yep.
These women, I would say, you know, how much did you win? They were winning. Well, how'd you know how to bet? They were literally, I like the team's color.
Yeah, colors, the mascots, people. Yeah.
It was just
Yeah.
randomness. And
Yep.
they would say, I would get these add-ons. They responded to the ads.
Yeah, and that's what we see is promotions and marketing is what starts it. And when you're in recovery from something else, one of the things that I'm starting to see some research on is even the GLP-1s, how they reduce cravings, and they can actually start to impact some of the brain activity. It might help curb alcohol consumption, and they're also looking at it as possible for gambling as well. We also know that the medication that helps with restless leg syndrome, thank you, that was also, like an SSRI, I believe it is, that was also, they were looking at that as maybe something that could help reduce, that would exacerbate an existing gambling condition. So if you're taking something like that, it could actually, if you have a gambling problem, it can actually make it worse. Worse, yeah, make it worse. Yeah, sorry about that. So there's medications. That's why it's important when we're talking to people to also understand, hey, are you on any medications? Let's understand your biology, your background. And if you're working with someone, if they're taking certain medications, do a quick check, do a Google search. You know, technology is a beautiful thing. You know, ask, but don't double check with a doctor. But if you have reason to believe that, hey, this might be compounding their issue, okay. Or if they're maybe, hey, they're not getting the urges anymore. Did they just start a new medication? So these are things we have to really take into consideration on top of the fact that if they were gambling on their smartphone, are we helping them relearn the relationship with this thing? Because every time they pick up a phone, that could be a trigger for return to use. Oh, I remember when I used to bet sports on this thing. It felt so good. But let me just pay my bills and let me just move on with my day. But that temptation could be there. Gambling blocking software is very helpful for smartphones. Gamban, Gamblock, there's one other one. Do we know the other one? Gamban and Gamblock are the two I'm familiar with. Gamban, that's fine, as long as there's something. That's all it is. That's all that matters. We've also talked about the near miss. You know, almost winning can be just as bad as winning itself sometimes. Student athlete, we talked about the unique vulnerabilities and the risks. They're highly competitive. They're risk tolerant, right? They understand. And let's go back for a second and talk about socioeconomic factors. When I was with the Kansas City Royals, I touched on this with them. A lot of these minor league guys are now getting contracts. So now they've been practicing. They've had family back in the DR, in Cuba, in Venezuela, in the US that have supported them, and now they've got a chance to pursue their dream. And they're getting money. And some of the issues we're starting to see is that these friends are now asking for money back. And they're saying, well, I was there to support you. Can you help me out? Could you intentionally fake an injury? Can you intentionally walk a batter in the third inning? Because they want to start making money on some of these outcomes. So what I encourage people is be careful who your friends are. Because for me, you have three types of friends. You have friends for a reason, a particular purpose, just a reason. You're a friend, you come in and out of my life. Nice to meet you, more of an acquaintance. But friends for a reason. You have friends for a season of your life. Maybe it's 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, but now just you kind of drift away over time. Like high school, I don't talk to my high school friends anymore. I was with them for a season of life. And then you have friends for a lifetime. A reason, a season, a lifetime. And the lifetime friends are the ones that you can count on. And there are very few. There's not as many of those. It's hard to keep lifetime friends for a long time. But that's what we have to be careful of. So when we're working with athletes, we also talk to them about their friend groups. Be careful. When people are coming at you, are they really your friend? When you have Uncle Steve reach out to you, you haven't talked to him in 10 years, and the first question he asks you is, who's injured today? Well, don't answer him, because he probably is asking that for some nefarious reasons. And that's family. That's a whole nother level. We know that if you work with any NCAA, does anyone work with NCAA athletes now? Okay, and maybe online if you do, just remind them that the NCAA is very strict under bylaw 10.3. NCAA athletes, coaches, staff, administrators, anyone touching sports cannot bet on anything where the NCAA holds a path to professionalism or an NCAA championship. So no basketball, no baseball, no football, no hockey, no soccer. If you want to bet on motocross or NASCAR, fine, not a problem. But these other things will get you jammed up. Gambling is also defined as daily fantasy sports, season-long fantasy sports, prediction markets, sweepstakes, sports betting proper. Can't do any of it. And with prediction markets, we're seeing that on the rise too. And again, that's a contract. It's governed by the Community Commodities Exchange, which is a federal agency. And you're just basically buying contracts. Will Louisville win? Yes or no? You're buying a yes contract or you're buying a no contract. So is it technically gambling down to the division level? No, it's not governed by the gambling regulators. But if we're just talking about, generally speaking, the definition of gambling, risking something of value in hopes of winning something of value where there's risk or uncertainty, yeah, it fits the definition. It certainly does. And so if people say, oh, I don't gamble anymore, I had a gambling problem, but now I'm trading prediction market contracts, that's not good. During COVID, I started buying Bitcoin. I'm someone who was in recovery at that point, and I know better, but COVID was a unique time that we all went through. There were some different challenges, some family illnesses that I dealt with, some passings that people I had lost. So once again, I found myself now with this time on my hand and not knowing how to deal with certain things. So I started buying the Elon Musk coin, with SHIB or whatever that thing was called. And I would make money. And I was like, all right, I'm good. But then I found myself, I started thinking about it. And I was like, I'm thinking about this a little bit too. So I now have enough knowledge in this space where I'm questioning myself, but yet I was still kept thinking about it. So I did the next thing I'm supposed to do. I called my sponsor. And I said, this is what I did. It's not technically gambling. And he stopped me. He's like, you know better than anyone else. Not technically gambling. That's BS. He goes, you bought SHIB. That's it. Be done with it. So, and that was it. Like, it was about 2 days of me like saying, okay, now something feels off about this. And that's going back to 2020. That had been 9 years. I guess that was 9 years, 8 years in recovery, 8, 9 years in recovery. And that's how quickly, that's why I always say, like, the switch is always on. We have to be careful. I don't bet on sports. I don't play blackjack. I don't play poker. I don't even like scratching off the Kohl's thing to see if I get 30% off or 20% off. I don't like doing any of that crap. But for some reason, cryptocurrency, I got caught up in the wave of that. And I justified it as investing. If something starts to feel like gambling, you got to talk about it. It's a personal relationship.
I have a gambler that I've been working with for a little over a year. He was pretty heavy into mostly collegiate sports. He was a high school athlete that didn't make it in college.
Oh, there you go.
He also works in the finance industry.
Yep.
He had about 9-10 months doing well, going to GA, doing some online GAs, doing all the right things, and he got into baseball cards.
Ah, good one. Yes.
Can you talk a little bit
Yeah.
about that?
Thank you. I actually see a lot of Major League Baseball and minor league baseball guys get into that. So baseball card and opening packs and just starting to think, okay, well, what's going to be in this pack? And if we think about opening up a pack, whether digitally, like online, like a prize pack or a random item, or physically opening up a baseball pack of cards. I used to get cards all the time growing up in high school. Anyone else ever get baseball cards? Opening packs of cards? That uncertainty, when you're opening up that pack, I could think about the mechanics like it was yesterday. And I would have a whole process, and I would look at them one at a time just to look for that rare card or that valuable card. It's the same thing though. It's going to provide a dopamine boost, right? It's something that's tradable. It's marketable. You can brag about it. You can share with your friends. It's something we're seeing across culture as pack opening. You can buy boxes. They'll break a box online, and you can buy the right to the contents of that box. So it's the uncertainty that's out there, and it's the risk reward. I mean, anything that gives that, and I see that with athletes a lot, is because.
It was a slippery slope. for
Yes,
him
yes.
Because he got into the baseball cards, talked to the others in GA, and they said, this isn't good, pick up a white chip. I don't know if he picked it up or not, but within days, he was back into sports gambling.
And that's the thing.
And about $20,000 more.
Card pack opening can seem so innocent, so to speak. I'm not gambling. I'm just buying some packs of cards. It's harmless. What do we say? It can always lead you back to your original drug of choice. And that's why even women in recovery, men in recovery from drugs or alcohol, I'm just going to gamble instead, right? Okay, but that could lead you then back to drug of choice. Now maybe you want a little money, you got a little extra money in your pocket, you feel good. Okay, let me just go over there and just buy some drugs too, you know? What was that?
Or it becomes like their new drug of choice.
It becomes their new one.
I mean, I've been in recovery for many years.
Yeah.
And I have lots of friends, and I have seen so many people with long-term recovery
Yeah.
now gambling to like the point where my friend, her and her husband had to move across, like she's a travel nurse, and he had to move back home to Kentucky because they couldn't stop.
Mm.
You know, it was like, it's just sad. Like I've just been seeing it over, and I like posted that I was here on my story on social media, and they're like all ha-ha-ing it, ha-ha. And I'm like, I'm talking about y'all.
Yeah.
Even my daughter said, tag Angela, my friend. Like,
Yeah.
You know, it's just sad that,
Addiction switching is a real thing.
yeah, it just becomes their new thing.
I've even seen people, in recovery rooms, it's interesting to me because when we think about certain connections the brain makes, it's like gambling with alcohol is highly connected. You know, I think that there was a stat I saw one time, like 60% of people with a gambling disorder have some type of alcohol use disorder. 61% have a nicotine dependency. So you start seeing gambling, nicotine, alcohol, and then you start looking at sugar cravings and what that does to the brain. And then you go to a 12-step room and you go to a meeting, and what do they serve? Powdery donuts, coffee, and people are smoking cigarettes outside. So it's like the nicotine, the caffeine, the unhealthy. See, I'm a big believer of nutrition in recovery as well. Exercise. Because we have to go back to those connections that were established before the addiction took over. So what were those activities you liked to do before the gambling became the primary focus? And I used to like to exercise, go out for a run. Great, get a runner's high. Lots of endorphins, lots of dopamine produced there. The brain has those connections. It's just under a little bit of dust. It hasn't been connected in a while. But it gets reconnected pretty damn quick, actually. And so get that exercise. Put healthy foods in your body. Get your leafy greens for mental health. Cut down on sugars because that's bad for mental health. Like, I think there's a lot that goes into recovery, and be an active participant in your recovery. I have a lot of friends that are white knuckling it. They sit there, they listen, and they're angry. You know, my brother's in recovery from alcohol. And my brother, early on, he would still go to the same bar on the same Friday night, sit in the same bar stool. The only difference was he was drinking an NA beer. His behaviors and mechanics, he would pick up the same thing with the same hand, peel off the label just like he would as if it was a real bottle of beer. Nothing else changed except for the contents in the glass. How long is that recovery going to last? Not very long. He had returned to use within 3 months. Second time around, he's got it. He's over 6 years now. Because he knew we have to now create a new world where the addiction no longer fits in. Because if you think about life, we can push something away for only so long until we get tired. Like, I'm going to keep hanging with the same bad friends that enable me. I'm going to keep doing the same activities that make it more risky for me. No. I've got to create a new life where maybe they're not my friends anymore. They were friends for a season. I'm out of that season of my life. They were friends for a reason. Those were the people that supplied me. I don't need them anymore. So we've got to create a whole new life where the addiction just no longer fits in. And that's a critical piece about the recovery aspect as well.
Yeah, just want to add something that I've experienced is that, you know, working with a population of reentry, that sports betting is huge in prison. And then we get a bunch of guys who come out and they go into sober living facility. I have watched sober living houses completely fall apart because of the behaviors. It's like they'll drug test you all day long if you're clean, but nobody's equipped to deal with or even address or realize that the sports betting that's going on in the house is what is causing the house to be unhealthy.
When I was in prison, gambling, it was a medium security, then minimum security, work farm. Correctional officers see gambling as a moderate risk at best. It's usually seen as a minimal risk. As long as everyone's doing the thing, they just let guys gamble. Play poker, you're playing for commissary. Because people will ask, well, there's no money in prison. No, but there's peanut butter, there's cigarette packs, you're trading for goods, services, whatever it is. And so gambling's all around. It's every day, 100%. I knew when I got sentenced, I don't say this too often. When I got sentenced on August 19th, 2011, that was the day that I realized I couldn't gamble anymore. It wasn't the day I got arrested or the day I got caught 18 months previous. That day I always figured, well, I'll go through this and I'll figure out a way to gamble someday. I still wasn't scared enough. Like I still thought in my brain, I'm going to figure this out. The day I got sentenced and they put the handcuffs on me and they escorted me out, I heard my mom sobbing in the back because we had reconnected at that point. That was when I knew, when I heard my mom sobbing, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. So when I found my way through the system, when I got to prison, I found the two biggest guys that were in there. And I said, come here. I said, I'm going to give you a jar of peanut butter. I'm going to give you a jar of peanut butter. This is what we're going to do. If you ever see me gambling out on that floor, beat the shit out of me in the bathroom. And they said, no problem. We'd be happy to do it. Good. But I gave them peanut butter because I knew, but they respected me of what I was trying. I gave them a little bit about my background. Now, in prison, you can't always be completely honest either. Because if people only saw me as a gambler who stole money, they might think I'm hiding the money somewhere. They might try to harass me. So I said, my last name ends in a vowel, and I'm in the gambling field. And they're like, oh, organized crime. I'm like, yeah, so you keep your distance, I'll keep mine. So I kind of played it that way instead, even though it wasn't really true. So I created a safety net, but I also hadn't had two people to watch over me because I needed those barriers. For me, that was my gam band in prison. Like, oh, they were going to take joy out of beating the hell out of me if they wanted to. And so I don't tell that story that often, but that was my early first couple weeks. But every day the guys were out there because I was advised of that from the GA rooms. When you go away, how are you going to keep yourself clean? Go to meetings. So I went to AA meetings because that's what they had in prison. Doesn't matter. 12-step program, surrendering. Like I needed to just be with people of like mind. And then I started going to church 4 times a week because I needed to rediscover my joy. And so that's how I started moving through the prison system. When we talk about behavioral warning signs, we're going to wrap up in a few minutes here and we'll leave some time for question and takeaways. Preoccupation, thinking about it all the time. Secrecy, lying. I'm a big on the secrecy one. If you're lying about something you're doing, then something's not sitting right. For me, the lie bet question, that's my favorite quick screen. So if you ever want to do a quick 2-question screen with anybody, have you ever lied to someone about your gambling? Have you ever lied to somebody close to you about your gambling? And have you ever felt the need to bet more and more money? If you answer yes to either one of those two, it's generally recommended that maybe that person should have a little bit more of a conversation. Take the full 9 questions on the DSM, take the 20 questions of GA, whatever it might be. But if you're lying or you're chasing, that could be a little bit of a problem. Irritability, sudden mood swings. There was a girl on the Oklahoma softball team. I was down with Oklahoma this year and earlier in the season. And she's like, oh, my boyfriend gambles. He's such a pain in the ass. When he wins, he's the best. Because he'll buy me things. I don't even ask for anything. He just buys me gifts and showers me with flowers and we go out to dinner and we have a great time. But when he loses, he cancels our plans. He mopes around. He doesn't even want to see me for 24 or 48 hours. And then he complains about the things that he bought me, saying, I wish I never bought you those things. I would have had more money to gamble. She goes, I don't want a relationship like that. It reminds me of my father. Isn't it funny that sometimes we choose, how we choose relationships in life and patterns was very interesting. And that was interesting. The other one that really hit me hard, and I feel, this one I still feel. I was up at Merrimack University outside of Boston about a month ago. And I had a session with the cheer and dance team. So the girls in there, and the girls are like, we really don't gamble. I said, well, how many of you know someone who maybe does gamble? Half the hands go up in the room. I said, what are some of the warning signs? What do you notice about their behavior? Or what do you notice about someone who may be starting to develop a problem? And they go, oh, they're borrowing money, they're mood swings. One girl raises her hand and she says, they get delusional. I said, well, what does that mean? She goes, well, they think they're doing things for you, but they're not. Like they tell you they're going to take you to Disney. They tell you they're going to buy you new sneakers for the first day of school. They tell you they're going to take you out to dinner after you just got a 4.0 on a hard test. She goes, that's why I hate my mom. My mom gambles, and she's delusional, and I hate her. That was strong. The girl next to her says, I'm scared to watch sports because my father gets violent and my father hits my mom. Those two girls are carrying that around. You know, in college, you carry bags. And these girls have that, and this was the first time they had said that. And their teammates were looking at that, and they were like, we had no idea you were dealing with this. And it just gives me chills when I think about that. Those girls immediately got support services from the school, and they said, we had no idea that they were walking around with this. And that's the thing about gambling, is we have no idea. We have no idea what people are walking around with. It may not be you who has a gambling problem. It might be someone that's close to you, someone you know, someone that impacts you, and they might be struggling. Sometimes the best advice and support we can give to someone is say, hey, listen, I know you gamble. I know sports betting's all around us here in Kentucky. I just want to let you know, if you ever want to talk, I'm here to listen. That's all. We can want recovery for somebody who's struggling, but we can't force it. Lead the proverbial Kentucky horse to water. Can't make them drink, right? We know that. So we can just say, we'll listen. Like, judgment-free, compassion, not comparison. You know? Don't, hey, you got a problem with your gambling. No, don't finger wag or point or preach. Compassion. We get a lot more done that way. Other warning signs, financial, academic. I mean, financial is obvious. We've talked about that. Academic, missing classes to watch March Madness. I mean, maybe they don't have a gambling problem per se. I mean, it's March Madness. People watch. But if they're doing this repeatedly or spending a lot of money, it could be an issue. And also, let's also remember that we're up against addiction by design, as it's been called. The way games are made, whether it's video games, whether it's social media, TikTok, Instagram, you name it, or gambling apps. It's about engagement. The longer they keep you engaged, that's how they sell marketing dollars. So now people will buy ad space on apps that keep you engaged. So their goal is to keep you there, not to redirect you somewhere else. And so that's why there's so much competition in this space. So we understand that we start to see push notifications. You know, hey, remember your favorite team's playing. Hey, listen, Louisville's playing in 30 minutes. Get your bets in. Because they know your search history. They know your algorithms. They understand who your friends are. Algorithms are not just based on your search history. They're also based on the search history of your friends. Because they're friends with you because you have like-minded interests. So now they're going to push their interests on you. Even though it might not be your top interest, it might be something like, oh, I started getting these ads about, you know, paper towels. I know you're interested in paper towels. Paper towels, you know, just a general idea. No one's interested in paper towels, okay? Zero friction deposits. This makes it really easy. Deposit money, digital. When you deposit things digitally, you don't feel the pain. When you spend money, it should hurt a little bit. Every time you buy something, it should hurt a little bit. But with college kids, with athletes, when they lose, it doesn't hurt the way it should. And when you do something digitally, it doesn't hurt. Like, I didn't take the cash out of my pocket and hand it to you. It's all, I'll worry about it next week. Payday loans, tribal lending sites. They'll give you $500 in your account today. You owe them back $1,500 next month. How are you going to pay that? I'll worry about that later. That's a later problem. See, we love to delay that stuff. All I know is I got the joy and the reward right now. And then you get the visual rewards for wins. People don't get addicted to the Sunday New York Times crossword puzzle using paper and pencil. They get addicted when it's online because of the lights and the sounds. I was at a senior center years ago, and I asked the older adults in the room, I said, if you put $10 in a slot machine and you pull the handle and the lights go off and the bells and the whistles sound and it says winner on the screen, win, 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 and you hear the ding, 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 and you get $4 back. You put $10 in, you get $4 back. Did you win or lose? And some of them actually said, well, it said we won. You lost $6. That's not a win. That's a loss disguised as a win. And that is so common in the world of gambling, and it messes with people's mind because they've got you now so hyped up on the auditory, on the visual, on the feeling, on the excitement. Oh, do it again, you'll be out of money, and you would have been a winner the whole time, but you just keep losing money. That's not how it works. So we have to understand risk, that when we're betting on sports, and here in Kentucky, I'll give you a little tip. The sportsbook operators want people to bet the same game parlay. That is the one that is the biggest take for the sports books. Because the lowest, I mean, when you talk about house edge is what's the likelihood of the sports book company winning. Traditional point spread, they set a point spread and you bet against plus or minus, you know, plus 3 points, minus 3 points. Then you bet a parlay. Now you've got to combine multiple things in a couple different games. So I need this team to win and that team to win. And if both of those outcomes happen, I win money. A little bit harder to do because you need 2 outcomes. But when you bet multiple events happening in the same game, that's the highest risk. That's the best profit for them. And if you look at marketing and commercials, that is the one that is promoted the most because they know that is their bread and butter. Hey, watch the Louisville game today. Will Louisville win and will so-and-so score more than 10 points? Will Louisville win, score more than 10 points, and will this person have more than 5 rebounds? If you get all 3 of them correct, you're getting paid 6-1. Make your bets now, right? That's what we have to be careful of. So as we wrap up here, healthy versus problematic. What's healthy gambling? It's recreational, it's fun, there's time limits, there's dollar limits, you're not getting drunk when you're doing it, and it's a form of entertainment. Problematic, everything that we've talked about. Through my story, chasing losses, gambling to deal with emotion, escaping problems, escaping pain, escaping life, where it starts affecting family. So set limits, balance life, don't chase losses, and don't bet when you're impaired. Alcohol, drugs, because that can only lead to more issues. In Kentucky, we have 800 Gambler, you have state-funded treatment, you have clinical care, and also assessment tools, whether it's GA or another one. Tons of resources, tons of tools. Kentucky Council on Problem Gambling, and also use your support groups. Gamblers Anonymous, Gam-Anon, Gam Talk. You also have GamFin for financial consultation. You have Gam Care as another resource. GamblersInRecovery.com is a list of online meetings from around the globe for the family member or for the person who's struggling. Great resource. And then podcasts. I co-host a podcast every weekend. It goes across the country for the last 6 years with a guy out of New York named Craig Carton. He was a New York City radio host. He had a gambling problem. He went to prison. He was on Fox Sports for a while, and we co-host a podcast where we have someone share their story and their journey of recovery every week. So lots of resources. And on college campuses, yeah, we need more ICGC. I would love every college to have a certified gambling counselor, or at least be knowledgeable of gambling on college campuses, because this is only growing. And to put our head in the sand and say, oh, well, there's nothing we're doing about it. No, I think it's time we have to do something about it. So more education, more awareness, more prevention is key. Whether peer education that's student-led, media literacy, and also advocacy on policy. That 18 to 21 I know is a big one. I know that's pending. I'll be interested to see how that shakes away. So understand those biological and social drivers, recognize the warning signs, and connect students and people with Kentucky-specific help networks. So with that said, I'm going to leave, we got 10 minutes left. So for everyone in this room, I want one takeaway of something you learned new, something you didn't know. Keep it to 10 words or less. That'll give the folks online to type any questions into the chat. If there's any questions, comments, thoughts, I welcome them. If not, not a problem at all, but at least we're going to get some feedback here. So starting in the back corner, 10 words or less, what's something we learned today, new or didn't know or that you liked?
I'm very garbage. He's taught me everything.
There you go. We know everything. Ron Sonlin, go ahead.
I'm gonna steal your line, you have to rebuild a new life that doesn't have room for addiction.
There you go. Rebuild the life so it just organically doesn't fit in. Thank you. Good.
I never put together that the individual athlete getting the threats and the I didn't think of that.
Yeah.
That was very
It's on the rise. I would say that the girl 2 years ago, Angel Reese, was the #1 recipient of harassment and threats when she was a senior at LSU. And she got 10 times the amount of threats that LeBron James would get. That's how bad it was for her. And so when she got drafted into the WNBA 2-3 years ago, she had to have her own security detail. They had to have people monitoring her social media just because of the nature and the level of threats that she would receive. So it gets really ugly really quick, too. How about you?
Transitions, the major life events can cause a desire to escape.
Thank you for that. Excellent. Good takeaway.
Personally, I grew up dancing, so that was an interesting comparison that I hadn't thought about, and how one mistake as a dancer really makes that difference.
You know, I appreciate that because, when you think about perfectionism, like that's what dance is about, is you have to be perfect. And I was talking to my 15-year-old about this, how like when she has plans with friends, it bothers her if it doesn't go her way. Like she holds life so tight. And it's funny because athletes tend to hold life a little looser because they're used to the failure, things not going their way. But dancers, like my 2 daughters are like that. They're like, oh, this happened, oh. And I'm like, okay, I'm an athlete. I fail all the time. Sorry, I went to prison. Thank you for that. I really appreciate that. Coming back here, go ahead.
I'm surprised to hear that the University of Louisville has emphasis on gambling disorder, because we have tried very hard over the years to get psychiatry and psychology and sociology and social work to put in their curriculum training for gambling disorder.
I would like to see them revisit that and have it brought back so that it's fully brought forward. I agree with you. I know their counseling department for athletes are aware of the gambling and they try to help, but there's never been anything said to me that they have a full-blown curriculum or this is what we're doing to support. So thank you for sharing that. Next time I'm there, I'm going to have to bring this up. Thank you. I will. Now we have an inside track. That's right. How about for you?
I think it's just like the risk-taking of like the athletes and like how the performance and all of that and how it ties into addiction and how closely it mimics substance abuse as well.
Yeah.
Which a lot of times go hand in hand.
Awesome. Thank you. Appreciate it.
For me, it's just understanding how broad the issue could be. In my mind, it's always been the traditional gambling, what I picture, and just understanding that it's really just about the risk-taking.
Yeah. Risk-taking and the reward mechanisms. Thank you. For you?
I think it's, I got some insight in one thing that you said about how that, dismissive a loss is. You
Yeah.
know, that there's the next thing, and it helped me, have a light bulb moment that maybe that there's some differences in reactions in genders in sports that can affect, how far that they carried their coping with it.
Absolutely. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you. I'm glad you had a light. I love light bulb moments. I love those aha moments. Thank you for that. And how about for you, last but not least?
It was nice to hear your story, and I always love seeing that recovery is possible.
Thank you.
You know, after such a huge life-changing event like that, it's kind of nice to see. What I would like to hear more on, I do have a question, and I don't know if it's the right time for it. Would you like for me to wait?
Well, we have only about 5 minutes left, so it depends on what the question is and how long it would take to answer.
It's just a
No, give me a question. Yeah.
You know, as a therapist, I'm always educating my clients, and I work with adults, so predominantly moms and dads come to me and talk to me about their kids who are gambling.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that there's a such thing as responsible gambling with your child? And I know that's a crazy question to ask, but it's happening so much, where I went to another training where they were saying that parents will literally set up an account
Yeah.
for their kid to go on the phone
Yeah.
and they have their own gambling. I mean, clearly that's an issue. It's illegal, I think.
It is. Yeah. Proxy betting. Yeah.
Is it a zero tolerance, you think?
Yes.
Okay.
That's proxy betting. My opinion is I wouldn't gamble with my child. And the reason is the reason they have laws in place is, and 18 is kind of young here in Kentucky, but 21, you know, it's still young. And this is an adult activity that should be done safely and responsibly. I'm all for parents having conversations with their kids to say, yeah, but Dad, Tommy's dad does it with him. Why can't I do it with you? I get that a lot, right? And I say, well, that's Tommy's dad and their relationship. Let's talk about our relationship. Do you even understand how the game works? Tell me what you understand first. For me, I'd rather involve them in dialogue and conversation. I'd rather upskill their knowledge base and decision making. Then when they get to the proper age, and I'm telling you, they're already going to do it with their friends without me looking. I know that's going to happen. I understand that. But at least I'm engaging in conversation to say, hey, be careful. This is how the game works. This is what you'd have to be careful of. For that reason, we're not doing it. It's just not something this family partakes in. That's it. You know, if you want to explore gambling when you become of legal age, go ahead. My kids had fake IDs. They were drinking before 21. I never had one, but I said, listen, you explore that relationship with alcohol. If you get caught, you know it's against the law. It's zero tolerance for that. If you get caught, don't be surprised. There's going to be repercussions. And so you're taking a risk. I've taken risks too. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. So I just would never condone a parent gambling with a child at the age of 16 or 17. I just wouldn't.
So much of it though, I mean, it's, and I know we can't get into it here, but it's like the blur, it's, you know, in the games and the kids' games and the.
In video
that kind of
gaming,
stuff.
yeah.
It's like, it's everywhere and I'm having trouble finding a safe space with it at all.
That's probably a topic for probably a different topic, and we can connect certainly afterwards because it's about setting limits in video games even,
Sure.
spending amount of money, the amount of time, because parents will say, I need you to turn this game off now, but if the kid's in the middle of a round and they're playing on a squad with their friends from school, turning that game off might have social repercussions tomorrow. And so say, hey, 2 more rounds and then that's it. So it's understanding the language and the landscape, but also helping them understand, like, you got studies, you got, like, technology is still a privilege, it's not a right. And yeah, just, oh, my friends are doing it. That's where comparison runs into the problem. So lead with the lens of compassion and have conversation is where I go. But was there anything else? I think we have a minute left. Anything online, or are we good?
You have one question online from Nick Johnson. He asks, as a sports fan, how do they monitor to make sure athletes don't throw games, ruin sports, in the interest of gambling?
Thank you. Our company, IC360, partners with the majority of the leagues and the sports books. So we have insight into what's called integrity monitoring. So if we start seeing nefarious activity or bets that are coming in that look a little bit suspicious, that will trigger a flag. I will also say it's impossible to monitor every single pitch or play of all games. Not saying it doesn't happen, but if we look at what the results have been in the last several months, 39 college kids from 17 universities got busted. They were found, and shit rolls downhill. So that just continues to pick up speed. So there are companies like ours out there using technology to monitor the lines, the behaviors, the betting patterns to try to identify and detect these bad actors. So I want to thank everyone for today, and I appreciate being here. Ron Sullivan, thank you.
Thank you for your excellent presentation.
Thank you so much.
And I want to maybe address what you said, because a lot of times I'm asked about giving lottery tickets as a stocking stuffer.
Yeah, that's another one.
And say, you don't put a pack of cigarettes in there, would you?
Right? Give him a shot of whiskey.
Yeah.
Give him a shot of bourbon.
Here's a little something from the
Oh,
council.
thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you all. Hope you enjoyed.
There are some goodies out there and some lemonade, and Dan will be back in here at 3:15 for his next section. There's another session across the hall.
That's right. The next one might have a little bit of overlap with this one, but you make your own decisions. Hey, good to meet you. person. My name's Dan Trolero, and I'm going to be closing out the day with a workshop, Beyond the Track, Navigating the New Era of Teen Sports Betting in Kentucky. So I'm born and raised in New Jersey, 50 years old. I turned 50 on January 24th this year. Got engaged a week later, so it's been a good start to the year. And in New Jersey, we have all forms of legalized betting. I mean, online casinos, sports betting, racetrack casino, you name it, we have it. But it's 21 plus for sports betting in New Jersey. So when I was sitting in the morning session, it dawned on me that I'm in a state right now where it's 18 plus teenagers. And that really really enhances the value of this presentation to say that we really do need education in the schools. We need education talking about gambling and elements of gambling so that our young emerging adults can make good decisions. So we're going to be talking about teen literacy, gambling literacy, and those types of topics today. Before I give you my background, I want to understand who you are. So I want to understand from the people in the room, tell me your name, what agency you work with, just a little bit about yourself. Go ahead.
My name is Cassie Puckett. Right now I'm working in private practice with gambling and substance abuse clients.
Great. Counseling, gambling, and substance abuse clients. And I'm just going to repeat that just for the people online so they hear. So thank you for being here.
My name is Cynthia Turner, and I'm the Prevention Director at Fort Rivers Behavioral Health. We're in Barr, Western Kentucky, about 10 miles from the Illinois border.
Oh.
That's one of our concerns, too. And then I'm currently overseeing a problem gambling grant that we have.
Awesome. So Western Kentucky, 10 miles from Illinois, prevention, education, awareness. We actually just signed with the state of Illinois. They've approved our collegiate education program for funding. So for the rest of this year into 2027, they're funding any college that we visit in Illinois. So anytime I'm down there close to the border, you're more than welcome to come and, whatever we can do to collaborate. So awesome. Good to have you.
Yeah, I'm Shannon Steinberg. I'm with Methodist Home of Kentucky, and I do some work in elementary schools and have clients in the office too. I'm a licensed clinician.
Licensed clinician, elementary school. Excellent. Thank you so much for being here today.
Brian, I work at Rooted Recovery, primarily substance use, operate insurance and utilization review. I work with Dr. Clark.
Excellent. Excellent. Insurance review, we talked earlier. For those of you that were on here earlier, we noticed that there is a diagnostic code for gambling. We still see it primarily coming through as a secondary. Usually there's another type of disorder that comes through when we're making a claim, whether it's mood or generalized anxiety or some other type of condition. So good to have you here. Thank you so much. How about you?
I'm Pam Beach. I work at Adonta Community Mental Health Center. I'm a licensed mental health and drug and alcohol counselor. I'm also Children and Family Services director, so this is my help.
Children and Family Services, licensed mental health, drug, alcohol, substance, the whole spectrum. Do you see, since gambling was legalized here in Kentucky, sports betting a few years ago, have you seen an uptick or any change in?
We are in rural, South Central Kentucky, so we're not really connected to a lot of the college towns.
Yeah, okay, awesome. Thank you very much. And how about for you?
Nathan Salcedo. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, alcohol and drug therapist, and I'm the assistant CEO at Adonta, and been doing it for about 30 years, and pretty much all those things. I'm also running for state office, so
Congratulations. I wish you luck for that too.
we'll see.
we'll see how it works out. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you for being here. And
Renee Moore, I'm with Hoskins Behavioral Health. We have 2 clinics in eastern Kentucky. We're a rural medicine and behavioral health clinic. And I am a program administrator, clinician, and I have a big practice in seeing former athletes, current athletes, and transitioning.
yeah, transitioning. And in our first session today, that transitioning is a really critical element. Sometimes those athletes have rooted their identity based on the fact that they were athletes. That's what they are first and foremost. And when they're no longer an athlete or no longer a dancer, it's like, who am I? What is my identity? And I know that's something I struggle with. And I'll share with you my story as we move through the session today. It's good that you're here, and so thank you for taking the time. Gambling's all around us. So how many of you have kids? Anyone have kids? How old? 19 and 13? 7 and 6. 19?
I have adult kids, but I have grandkids.
Grandkids.
Or preteens.
Do they talk about gambling? They talk about spending money on video games? They talk about Roblox? Do they talk about any of these topics? Yeah? Not so much? Okay. Do they play video games or no? Good. Outside's great. How about for you?
They're a little bit of the Roblox, I think, but no video game. They're outside a lot too.
Okay. Yeah, I know. I have 3 kids. So I have twins that are 20. My daughter dances at University of Pittsburgh. She was never much of a gamer whatsoever. I have a younger daughter who's 15. She's a dancer. Not much of a gamer at all. She liked her Roblox, but then she just kind of like, whatever. She never spent a lot of money on it. Just wasn't her thing. I have a son who's also 20, so I have twins, boy-girl twins. Athlete, baseball player, into video gaming, like similar personality traits that I had. I'm 16 years in recovery, so I started my journey of recovery on February 11th of 2010 from gambling, and that's kind of why I do the work that I do now. And so my son, I can see certain personality traits, and he was a gamer. And growing up, he had his Kindle, and he loved playing this pool game on his Kindle. He would shoot pool. Every day he'd get free coins, and they'd give you daily coins for free. And you could use the coins to play as many games as you wanted. He started risking all the coins on the one game. And so these little like patterns that you start to notice as a parent. And there was one afternoon where he had missed a shot that he said, I should have hit this, you know. And he took his Kindle and he threw it across the room. Uh-oh. Now you risk all the coins, you lose a game, you throw the device across the room. Some of the lashing out that we see, right? Inability to control themselves. And I said, hey, I think this game is changing your behavior. Let's put it away for a while. This is not a healthy game for you. So he didn't understand it quite at the time. 2 years passes, and now he's like 14. Like, this is probably when he was 12 or 11. I don't remember the exact age. He says to me one day, he goes, Dad, I want to play that pool game again. I'm curious if I'm just different and able to handle it now. Okay, knock yourself out. I'm curious too. So it was a little bit of like an experiment. So he plays the pool game, and he goes in his room, and I'm just downstairs cooking dinner or whatever. And he comes downstairs, and I was like, well, how did you do? He said, I played for like 15 minutes, and I realized I started getting upset at the game again. He goes, that game's just not good for me, so I just deleted it. Good. And that's the type of awareness, thank you, that's the type of awareness that we need to have. We need to engage and talk to our young people today, adolescents, teens, to say, what is your relationship with this game? Like, life's about relationships. It's about relationships we have with each other. It's about relationships we have with caffeine, with food, with gambling, with alcohol. Is it a healthy relationship or is it unhealthy? I can't sit here and say, don't do that, finger wagging. That's not who I am. It's not my right to say don't do that. And if I tell you not to do something, it becomes extremely attractive to do the thing I said not to do. And like when you go to a restaurant and they put down this hot plate, this black cast iron plate, it's sizzling. Fajitas are on there, peppers and onions and steak and just deliciousness right in front of you. I'm getting hungry now. And all of a sudden the server puts it down and says, don't touch the plate, it's hot. I touch that damn plate every time. I am wired to touch the plate. I'm a plate toucher. That's what I am. Because I want to know what my definition of hot is compared to yours. And why is that? There's ego in there for sure. Oh, I can touch the plate. It doesn't bother me at all. Look at me. Maybe I'm just a little better than you. Is that what goes through my brain? I don't know. But I'm competitive. And when you tell me I can't do something, damn well I'm going to try to do it. I raced triathlon for 18 years after my baseball career ended. Sprint, Olympic, half iron, Ironman. Every time someone would say, oh, that race is a little bit too long, you probably won't be able to complete it. Watch. So that's the thing, is like I'm wired that way, so I 100% say, don't do this, it's bad for you. Instead say, okay, well, understand, how does it work? So gaming, gambling, how does the game work? Are you going in with knowledge of how this thing operates and how it works so that you can make informed decisions? That's what I'm about. And that's what we're trying to do in the schools. We want to understand that first, we're in Kentucky where horse racing has a deep-rooted heritage. When I was here for the 2020 conference, I was here right before COVID in 2020. Was anyone at that conference in 2020? Were you? It was like Lexington or Louisville? I can't remember. It was Louisville? Yeah. And so I got to that conference. People are hacking up a lung in that conference. People are coughing. I'm going through the airport. People are sneezing. They got masks on. And I couldn't figure it out. I'm like, why is everyone wearing a mask? What's happening? A few days later, I had COVID. I had COVID before we even got it in the U.S. in March. And I had it from the Kentucky Conference, I think. And so at the time, they were talking about sports betting on the horizon. And the people talking at that conference said, we'll never have sports betting in this state. We're a horse racing state. We don't bet on sports. And I said, but what's horse racing? Horse racing's a sport. Yeah, but that's different. It's our heritage. It's who we are. This other sports betting will never happen. Look where we are today, 2026. We never say never. So there's a deep-rooted passion for gambling within the state of Kentucky, and we're seeing it just in other states as well. But the just say no philosophy doesn't work. It doesn't work. It's understand your relationship with it and understand what it looks like. Horse racing. Cultural identity, okay? So we know it's been around us forever, and now we have sports betting as well. You have historical racing terminals. Horse racing is even changing how people bet. There's now live in-play wagering on horse racing events. In certain jurisdictions, you could bet the start of a horse race. And at the halfway point, if your horse is in the lead, you can close out that bet. You would take a lower payout. So if you're betting a horse at 10-1, you may only get odds of maybe 3-1 payout if you choose to close that out. But the risk is if you let the race continue, what if the horse loses? You get nothing. So it almost becomes the time value of money. You ever see the show Deal or No Deal? I used to love that show. The premise of the show was, do you want to take the guaranteed money now, or do you want to press your luck a little bit more and try to get a little bit more money? That's the way sports betting works today. In almost every sports contest, when you bet on sports, you have the opportunity to close out your bet in play in real time. And what you're doing is you're sacrificing that future value. So that makes gambling and sports betting an interactive experience. It's immersive. It means you constantly have to pay attention to it. So that's what we're seeing, not just in Kentucky, but all around the country. Historical horse racing, this really expanded digital wagering. It takes the old results and it makes it into kind of a randomized outcome where people can wager. And you don't know what horse racing results it was from. It's all randomized, but that's how we start to see more and more gambling spreading throughout the state. Mobile sports betting. I live in New Jersey. Not only do we have mobile sports betting, we have online casinos in our pocket 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. For me, gambling blocking software is a critical aspect of my recovery. So Gamban, Gamblock, those are sites that you can load onto your digital device, onto your laptop, that blocks access to these sites. One of the things that we see oftentimes with online gambling, it's easy return to use. So you've had a bad day at work, you're frustrated. Did Louisville win in the first round today, or are they playing later on? I don't even know if they won. NCAA tournament's going on right now. And so all of a sudden you're a Louisville fan and they lose and you're frustrated. Let me just go on here and gamble for a while. I just had an argument with my spouse. Let me gamble for a while. Blocking software stops that impulsivity, and that is critical, because that stops it at a point when you can return to use. So we've seen gambling expand here since 2023, and with gambling expansion comes a lot of risk. Not just the risk of addiction, but it's also the risk of threats to your athletes in the state here. I talked about at the last session that there was Louisville student athletes and coach that were harassed by a Texas gambler. This just hit the news wire a few weeks ago. And so you had a guy in Texas who bet on a Louisville football game. Louisville played Cal in November this year. They lost. This guy had bet on player performance and the outcome of the game. He lost $65,000 on the game. And so he felt inclined to threaten the coach, the assistant coach, and the quarterback. And he said things like, you owe me $65,000 because you suck. Well, no one's going to pay you $65,000 back for your bet, right? And then he says, I'm going to make your life a living hell. I'm going to make your life hell for you, for your wife. I'm going to kill your wife. I'm going to kill your girlfriend. I'm going to haunt you the rest of your life. This guy was threatening and severe. Louisville took pictures of the screen. They have screenshots of this. They got it over to law enforcement on campus. Law enforcement said, you know what? This is a federal issue. So because of the nature of the crime, it became an FBI issue. FBI Texas got involved. They found the person. Our company is a company that kind of works in this space. So IC360, who I work with, I do the education for the company with athletes all around the country. But we do integrity monitoring. We monitor social media channels. We monitor sports betting. We monitor the bets that come in on these games, and if we see something suspicious, we flag it. Now, what is a suspicious bet? There were 2 pitchers from the Cleveland Guardians that got busted last year in Major League Baseball. They were throwing pitches intentionally out of the strike zone so that their friends could make money betting on that particular outcome. So you can bet the next pitch will be a ball. That's how granular sports betting is. They had agreed that they would throw a ball on the first pitch of the second inning. So everyone was betting on that outcome. Well, our company sees these bets coming in, and we're like, there's a lot of money being wagered on this particular outcome. This is suspicious. And so we flagged it and we reported it. So we work to help keep the ecosystem safe in the world of gambling expansion. That's the work that we do. I get the privilege of traveling the country working with athletes, pro athletes, college athletes, Olympic athletes, to help keep them safe. That's the work. Specific to high school, we develop high school education program. In New Jersey, we're piloting it right now. We have 30 high schools that have registered for our digital platform to talk about some of the things I'm going to show you today so that educators and teachers are equipped to talk about gambling. The one thing I hear is from teachers, we don't know what to talk about. What are the topics we should be bringing up to our students? So we're going to talk about gambling literacy. That's important. Financial literacy, probability and odds and randomness. These are all important topics that high school people need to understand. But where does it start? It starts with those shiny little loot boxes right there. So if you have someone who plays games and plays video games, chances are they've probably spent money on them. And they're investing money. They're trying to get a rare digital item, and it feels really good. So here's one of the questions. If you have a game, if you have, let's say in this vault, there's a rare item, and you have a 1 in 100 chance of getting that rare item. 1 in 100. So you take $100, and you say, I'm going to spend $100 to try to get that rare item. The first 99 times, you did not get it. It's 1 in 100 chance, and you failed the first 99 times. Are you guaranteed to get that item on the next one or no?
Nope.
Why not?
Because it's not how it works.
It's not how it works. And it's not how it works because it's random.
Randomness, yeah.
And so
Continuously random.
what we found in our kind of pilot study is that high school kids said, well, absolutely I'm going to get it. Because it's 1 in 100. So I didn't get it the first 99 times. I'm going to get it on the 100th try. But the way random number generators work is that every time you spend that dollar, it's always 1 in 100. It has no memory of the previous 99 outcomes. It has no memory of the previous outcome. They're all mutually exclusive. And high school kids do not understand that. They just see 1 in 100, I'll spend $100, I'm guaranteed to get it. No. How many of you have ever played roulette? How many colors are on a roulette table? How many? What's the third color? Green. The 0 and 00. But that's good. That's good that you said that, because when I was at high schools, kids would say, roulette's the best game to play. It's 50-50. It's either red or black. And I said, no. The reason the 2 greens are kind of hidden at the end, they don't want people to spot them, so spot on, 100% right. But that's what shifts it to the odds of the house. Because if it was red or black, it would be 18 out of 36. That's 50-50, truly. That's like a coin flip. But when you have the 2 zeros, it shifts it from 18 out of 36 to 18 out of 38, which is now 9 out of 19, which is a 45% edge to you and like a 54.5% to them. So high school kids just don't see the game. And so some of what we talk about when we talk about high school literacy is educating people on how the game works and what the mechanics are, to let them know the house always wins. That's how they build fancy casinos. That's how there's so much money that goes in. That's why they can give all these promotions. But it starts early with video gaming. It starts earlier than that. Anyone ever been to a Chuck E. Cheese? Dave & Buster's? I mean, there's mechanics of gambling all around us. When I was on a flight, mom handed her phone to a 4-year-old. Kid opened up that smartphone, started playing a social game. It was a Bible-based slot machine game. And the kid would get 3 matching Noah Arks and win like virtual coins. So it was a Bible-based slot machine. Based on the books of the Bible, you'd have to like get these outcomes. I've never seen anything like that before. But it kept the kid entertained, and she's 4 years old playing that on a plane. And I just looked and I was just shaking my head in disbelief. That's like giving a 4-year-old a lottery ticket or a shot of bourbon or something. You know, it's like all of a sudden if we're not having education about this, it could become problematic. We also have to realize that when we talk to our teens, We hear them say so often, they tend to put a lot of emphasis on luck. It's my lucky day. I'm going to wear my lucky shirt. Look, I do a lot of trainings in New Mexico with some of the casinos and the racinos in New Mexico. And when I walk through the casino gaming floor, it's amazing to me when someone's sitting there and they've decorated the slot machine. They have trinkets and trolls. Go ahead. Oh, it's a racetrack and casino merged into one. Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, good question. And so you've got the racing element, and then you've got the casino side. So people can do both. And in New Mexico, you can't drink when you play the slot machines. But you can make bets on the horses and drink and get drunk there. You just can't bring the alcohol into the slot machine. So they don't have any live dealers there. So they're decorating the casino, the slot machine, and they're covering up the things, and they're doing these weird activities that they think gives them luck or gives them skill on how they press the button or something like that. We see it all the time. When you talk about, though, with high school kids, they love that near miss. The brain reward. Do you know your brain processes a near miss just as a win? It produces dopamine. There's a critical element about, and it's a video that I've shown in the past, where they take a person who was struggling with his gambling and they put him inside an MRI machine. And they look to see how his brain is activated while he's playing roulette. And what they find is that it's not just the winning that counts, it's the participation and the anticipation. And those are the two things that can keep someone really hooked. And those are the chemicals that get produced in the brain. This is where we have to educate our teens and our young and emerging adults, is that we use lights, we use sounds, we use animations so that the loss feels like a win. Like, oh, I was so close, but it looks so good. Let me do it again. And that's how we start falling into this trap. That's what we have to be careful of. We also have to, we talked about before, algorithm awareness. So the algorithms are always like the house. The house math is always going to be in favor of the house. That means games are designed for the house to always have a better advantage than the player. 100% of the time, the house will have a better advantage. It might be slight, but it's always going to be in favor because over long periods of time, the house always wins, okay? So then when you start getting into like feelings, that starts to account for 45% of a player's behavior. A player will be impacted by their feelings. Any blackjack players in here? Anyone ever play blackjack? There's a strategy to blackjack. There's certain ways you play the game. And there's rules of thumb. If a dealer has a 6 or less and you have a 3, you hold, you don't hit. There's certain hands you just don't hit on. I've played at blackjack tables back when I was gambling, and people would say, I have a feeling the next card's going to be low. And I'm like, you are screwing up the entire hand. And it used to bother me. This is why I never gambled in person with people, because I didn't like how stupid people were, in my opinion. When I was gambling, I had a very bad attitude and a bad temper. They were ruining my chance to win because they were going based on feeling. And they would minimize actual probability. See, students, they overestimate their knowledge. They overestimate feelings and emotions, and they don't pay attention to the math. Gambling is about probability, odds, and randomness. And if high school kids don't understand that, they're going to get themselves in trouble. And that's part of the problem we see, is that there's this lack of knowledge around that. If you're playing a game and your odds of winning are 1 in 20, I'm sorry, your odds of winning are 1 in 5. You have a 1 in 5 chance of winning, and you play 20 hands. So 1 in 5 chance of winning, you've played 20 hands. How many have you won? 5. 1 in 5. I mean, over long periods of time, you'll win 5. How many have you lost? 15. So when I ask high school kids, I'm like, how much have you? We lose 15 out of every 20 hands. That's pretty bad. Why am I playing this game? I'm like, good question. Why are you playing the game? And it gets into a deeper conversation. See, we have to help them rethink. Sometimes we get stuck in patterns of thought. We have to shake people a little bit, help reframe the problem or reframe the question so they can understand it a little bit differently. One of the areas we see a problem with, though, is mobile access. Kentucky, 18 plus for sports betting, man, that's a big issue. I'm telling you. I don't think it really dawned on me that it was 18 plus. I know I mentioned that before. When I was 18, I was not equipped to be betting on sports. Even though I had a gambling problem already at that age. See, I grew up in a house where gambling was normalized. I grew up in a house where my mom left when I was 2 years old. My dad raised me and my brother. And my dad gambled and drank regularly. And I bonded with my dad at the racetrack. Horse racing was my first love. In New Jersey, I'd go up to the Meadowlands or some of the other racetracks, how to handicap horses, how to read the racing program. I fell in love with the process. It wasn't necessarily the gambling at first. For me, it was the process. It was getting the form, getting my paper and pencil out, and starting to write notes. And it was a really intricate process of handicapping. And that's what I fell in love with, the detail-oriented part of it. And my dad encouraged it. He taught me how to gamble. And, you know, I was an athlete. I was a baseball player in high school. I was scouted by the pros. I was scouted by 3 D1s. I was a lefty pitcher. And, you know, I had an injury early on. I had a rotator cuff problem. It damaged my career. It hurt my opportunity to go forward in sport. But I still graduated with a major in finance, a minor in economics, and I got my first job working at New York City at Goldman Sachs investment banking. And I got married June of 2001, and I apologize from the crowd that was here in the first one. And, you know, 3 months later, life changed because September 11th happened. And I was downtown that day, and I watched the second plane hit the towers, and I watched people jumping out of windows and bodies hit the pavement. And I lost 14 friends, and I lost 2 more to suicide. And so for me, in that moment of time at the age of 25, where I didn't know how to feel, because I was never talking about feelings with my dad, I thought I was okay. And so I just assumed I'm good. But my body, there's a book called The Body Keeps the Score. Bessel van der Kolk wrote it. The physiological response to trauma and how trauma lives in the body and it has no voice. And I was experiencing that without realizing it at the time. Looking backwards, I can now see it. But at the time, I wasn't fine. And so I had to leave Goldman in 2003 to join Prudential. And at that time, I'm starting to gamble more and more because I went back to what was normalized at an early age for me. That was my safe place. I chose to use gambling as my escape. That was my outlet. It wasn't alcohol. It wasn't drugs. I never did that. Gambling was my safe haven. And so I turned to that. I became a financial planner. I started developing a gambling problem, and I was in charge of your money, which is not a good, that's like the person who struggles with alcohol working in the liquor store. Not a good idea, right? Probably a good career choice. And so I started making a lot of bad decisions, and I embezzled over $2.1 million from my clients and my company to fuel my gambling. And it was all online gambling. I would go to Vegas. I wouldn't gamble in Vegas like I would online. And it was illegal. It wasn't legal. It wasn't regulated. It was offshore illegal gambling. And I would wager all the time. I'd had kids, didn't matter. I would find ways to do it. You know, anyone who struggles with addiction, you find time to do that drug of choice. That becomes my priority. Yeah, I'm a family man. I'm married. I have kids, but I love the gambling. That was my relation. I was having an affair on my marriage with gambling. That was my primary relationship. And so it ultimately destroyed me. Ended up getting caught. Ended up getting sentenced to 6 years state prison. So February 11th of 2010 is when I got found out by the IRS, by the FBI, by the Attorney General's office, and I admitted to everything I had done. August 19th, 2011, I got sentenced to 6 years state prison in New Jersey. I served 4 of the 6 years in the system at different levels of care. And while I was away, I realized that I suck at life and I need to do something different. And while that's not positive self-talk, it's just honestly how I felt at the time. And so I got my master's in psychology, and I wanted to understand this because I had to get myself unlocked from the mental prison I'd been living in since September 11th. And I started doing the work and started emotional work and emotional awareness. And I found my niche was to start talking about gambling because we don't talk about it in schools. People walk around saying, oh, it's not a real addiction, it's a money problem. I sat in an inpatient facility right after I had gotten caught in Philadelphia. It was called the Keystone Clinic. And when I'm sitting in that room, in a group therapy room with other folks struggling with substance, there was not one other gambler in there. It's fentanyl, heroin, alcohol, heroin. Dan, gambling. They laughed at me. Literally laughed at me. They said, well, what else? I'm like, that's it. They're like, you didn't do any drugs? Nope. Then why the hell are you here? Just stop gambling. You're good. You can go now. And that was my experience with inpatient at the time. And I got discharged by the clinical director the next day. He said, I don't know how to help you. He goes, we've never seen anyone with just a gambling problem before. So good luck. Go to GA maybe. That was it. And so that's what I started doing. I started going to Gamblers Anonymous where I was around other people who were like me. That peer-to-peer, like I'm not alone. I'm not so unique. You know, there's nothing wrong with me. I needed to be with other people. And that was my journey, how it kind of started. And so when I came out of prison and I got my freedom back, I started working at the New Jersey Council on Compulsive Gambling. and started making waves into the high schools. I hit 142 high schools in 2018. I didn't get in the door very easily because high school principals and clinical SAC, student assistance counselors, say, gambling, kids are too young, it doesn't happen here. Okay, but do they drink? Oh yeah. Isn't that too young too? But that happens, but gambling doesn't? Oh, well, it's not a big deal here. So I started changing my approach. I said, do your kids come into school tired sometimes? Yeah. Do they play video games? Yeah, that's all they talk about. Great, I'd love to talk to your kids about video games. Healthy choices, decision making, and risk taking. And that's how I started getting into the high schools. Because within those video games are those loot boxes, prize packs, decision making, risk taking, and that's what started changing the landscape in the conversation. There was a problem, there was a solution to be had, we just had to find the right one. And so it is important as we go through talking about gambling to realize that we're talking about developing brains. Late 20s, mid to late 20s, prefrontal cortex, decision making, risk taking. This is what they're struggling with. They're struggling with transition. They're struggling with a lot at this age. And they're also struggling with their technology use. So for any of you working with folks, if you're dealing with someone in recovery from gambling, talk to them about their tech use too. Because it's important to understand the type of gambling a person does. If you're going to the racetrack and buying paper tickets and putting $2 at the teller window, that looks a hell of a lot different than being on this thing every 20 seconds making a bet. It just hits the brain differently. And so it's important that we understand the type of wagering. Gambling's no longer an event. It's a constant digital companion. It is in our face. It is across the scrolling ticker on the bottom of the TV screen. It's at the water cooler. It's in the classroom. It's on the field. It's all around us. So it's with us 24/7. There's social groups, there's chats, there's Discord, there's all types of just Reddit threads, you name it, can't get away from it. It's all around us. So how do we teach gambling in high school? It's not just the just say no approach. This is about critical thinking. This is about understanding the elements that go into gambling. Math is the medicine. To me, it comes down to probability, odds, randomness, and making sure that they understand this is not about luck or feeling or emotion. While those are elements of it, yes, it comes down to statistics and math. Visual literacy, okay? Understanding risk recognition. What are the psychological triggers? Kids love to chase losses. Athletes love to chase losses. Because there's something inside of us that says, I don't want to lose. I don't want to be a loser. I don't want to feel like a loser. I want my money back. How many of you have ever gambled and thought, I'm going to gamble a little bit longer, I want my money back? I know I have. Yeah. I want my money back. And so I'll go to the ATM. I'll gamble a little longer. I'll just take out a little bit more money. I need to have my money back to feel good. For me, a good gambling day was when I broke even. To me, that was a good day. When I didn't lose, that felt good to me. I didn't have to win. I just had to not lose. But most of my days ended with $0 in my gambling account because I would just keep chasing losses constantly. Siri just thought I asked for it. No. Siri just gave me the definition of probability, odds, and randomness. See, it's listening. Integrating math literacy in the classrooms. Odds, the VIG, calculation, risk, probability, randomness. We're going to continue to hone in on this. This is what needs to be discussed and taught in the high schools. In Kentucky, for those of you that have kids, did anyone ever come in and talk to the kids in high school or middle school about gambling? Maybe someone from GA share a story to your knowledge? No? In New Jersey, we don't have it. In New Jersey, it would be maybe someone like I would come into the school, talk about gambling addiction. When I work with NCAA athletes around the country, what I traditionally see are the athletes from foreign countries, Europe and Australia primarily, they get gambling education every year, growing up until they got to their secondary school. And so they would always have it. Australia especially. Australia has some of the highest rates of problematic gambling in the world. Some of the highest rates. It's normalized at an early age. The marketing is all around them. It's encouraged. It's just a family bonding activity. So it's typically talked about.
Well, it's the opposite now is that on ESPN and like Fox Sports, before a big game, there's sports betting shows that's educating
Oh, yeah.
kids. You see the ticker running.
Yep.
And that's where they're getting their education.
Yeah, they get it on TikTok, they get it on TV, they get it on YouTube. I mean, I have my daughter before the Super Bowl this year, I was down at Texas Tech, and she's on the dance team at Pitt, so all the girls are watching the Super Bowl. They made wings, they had a whole big thing at the house, all that good stuff. And she's like, Dad, I put $5 on the Seahawks this year. I hope you're not mad. I'm like, thank you for letting me know, because obviously you're in Pittsburgh, I'm in Texas. I would have no other way. So I'm thankful for the open conversation I have with the kids. And I was like, I'm not mad. I said, good for you. I hope the Seahawks win. I'm a Giants fan. I can't stand the Patriots. I hope the Patriots lose anyway. And I said, well, how did you decide the Patriots or the Seahawks? She goes, I don't know. I just like the color of their uniforms. And all of our friends, we kind of flipped a coin. And then we're like, okay, let's just do the Seahawks. So she's like, one of the girls has a sports book. I was like, oh, really? She goes, yeah, it's because her boyfriend is a student athlete. He's not allowed to bet on sports. She opened the sports book account in her name, and he bets through her account. So now I tell my daughter, I wish you didn't tell me that. Because now that's the area that I work in. I don't need to know that. Because that could be, now he's doing something illegal. And so the issue becomes, as the conversation was going, she's like, yeah, well, a lot of girls here started gambling with their parents because the parents would open the account, and it was a way just to like, kind of like get together. She goes, you never did that for us. And she goes, I understand why. Like, I understand. Like, we never did that together. But she goes, I had no idea how many people start gambling with their parents at an early age. And it's like, if you're a parent, it's not cool to open up a gambling account and let your kid gamble through it. That's like letting your kid just now start drinking or have a cigarette or do anything else. Like, we don't see the immediate effects of gambling all the time. We see it with alcohol. We see it with drug use. We understand the immediacy of substance use disorder. Gambling, we don't see it. We understand that substance use disorder has withdrawal symptoms when it gets really bad. And if someone needs treatment and care, we have to be very careful when they stop using. Gambling doesn't have that. Gambling doesn't have withdrawal. We understand we can give a urine screen and a urine test for someone with drugs and alcohol. Gambling, I'm not going to pee dice. There's nothing that comes out. It would hurt like hell if I did. So there's no positive urine screen. So while they're similar from a DSM perspective, non-substance related disorder on par with substance related disorder in the DSM-5, there's still so many differences, which is why we have to have conversation, which is why we have to say, hey, listen, I know your friends are doing this, but let's have a conversation about it. Let's talk about it, all right? So integrating mathematics, even integrating in social studies. In Kentucky, like, what's our history? We are deep, rich tradition in horse racing, centered on gambling. What's our history? In New Jersey, we've had Atlantic City casinos for decades. We've had horse racing for decades. We've had lottery for decades. So where we have states, like, we have to work this into curriculum. What we've done in New Jersey is we developed a digital platform that teachers can then go into and have the topics to talk about, how to talk about the topics. There's 3 to 5 minute digital education videos that someone can watch, take some knowledge check, answer, question and answers, and they get a badge, a certificate or a badge. And then teachers are using that for extra credit. So if the kid goes home and wants to log in and watch a 4-minute video on emotional awareness and gambling, and they show the badge to the teacher, they get an extra credit point. Great. That's how we want to encourage and make the learning fun, but at least then they're learning something along the way. We also have to empower critical thinking, because we have to make sure that people understand, like, what you think you might know looks like a good bet. Like if you're betting the Kentucky Wildcats, you have to realize that the apps and the algorithms are always 10 steps ahead of you. So many times I'll hear a kid say, I have such a good feeling about the game, and I did my research, and this game, they're getting 5 points, but they should be the favorite. This is a lock. This is a home run. No, it's already been factored in. Whatever you're thinking, someone smarter and a computer that's AI-powered has already thought of it, oftentimes in the gambling field. And kids have a hard time with that because that ego is still really big when you're talking 17, 18, 16, 18, 19 years old. So we have to understand that they realize that literacy is going to shield them against making bad decisions. And sometimes we give basic advice. That's what parents do. That's what I used to do. Hey, be careful. Here's some basic advice. Gambling can get bad. Then you start highlighting risk, protective factors, risk factors, protective factors. We start elevating the messaging. Prevention strategies, how to keep the community safe. That's what we heard about, community involvement, community awareness. How do we create a safer community? And then it's full literacy. It's like, we need curriculum. Virginia has K through 12, I believe now, mandated in the schools. The pilot that we now have in New Jersey, we're hoping to get mandated in the schools by 2028. This is a goal. It's a step in the right direction. We've got to make sure our emerging youth are safe and protected in all areas. What are the red flags? Some of the things that we've seen in the high schools and we've seen around the country, loan sharking. High school kids lending money to another person, kid can't pay, all of a sudden there's an issue. We see it in school cafeterias. I was at a high school in North Jersey where I was talking to seniors during it was a talk about your job day, so I was invited in to talk about sports betting, integrity, monitoring, technology, and all the kids wore the sweatshirts from the colleges that they'd be going to, or t-shirts or something. It was kind of a nice thing to do if they were going to school. And two of the girls were like, oh, there's gambling all throughout our high school. I'm like, well, how do you know? She goes, because in the lunchroom, there's 2 kids in this room right now who take bets from people. So these 2 girls were calling out their peers. And I look around the room, and I can see 2 guys laughing their head off, kind of like elbowing each other. One kid was going to Ohio State, and the other kid was going to Michigan. So 2 kids taking sports bets. And I talked to the kids afterwards. I said, guys, this is not how you want to get into college. I said, you got to be really careful. If you're gambling now, by the time you get to college, you're going to run into a big problem. And so just having some of those conversations, and they talked about, like, what we see all the time is that it's easy to bet with students because sometimes kids will lend you money, you don't have to pay it back right away. That's the old school bookmaking. That's the stuff that I was into. And I still have family friends, fathers, who have 25-year-old kids that owe $60,000 to some person they've never met virtually. Because loan sharking and bookmaking is now digital. You get a new website link to your phone every day. You can make the bets. If you lose, we just add it to your bill. And then one day, you get a text message that says, hey, you owe us $22,000. You got to send us $10,000 by 5 p.m. tonight. And the kid says, I don't have that money. And the guy says, if you don't have the money, we will break your leg. We will hurt your mom. We will kill your dog. This is what we see all around because it's not the person face-to-face anymore. It's faceless. Bookmaking today, and some of the high school kids get jammed up in this, it's very scary. And then they don't know what to do. I've sat across a number of individuals in my time, 16 years in recovery, where I've negotiated payback terms on behalf of someone who was struggling with organized crime. It's not my favorite thing to do. I don't like walking into a house where I know I've got someone who struggled with their gambling, and now I've got someone from an organized crime family in the Northeast who's sitting across from me, and the first thing he does, reaches for his back and he puts his gun on the table. And he says, if you have one, I would recommend you put your gun on the table too. I said, I don't carry a gun. I'm just here to try to help the family, that's all. Haven't had a problem yet. I don't like being in that line of work. I've kind of drifted away from that as my recovery's gone on. But early on, I had a lot of those conversations. They're not fun and they're not pleasant to have. We also see high school kids that start to get stuck with gambling. They are preoccupied with stats and numbers. They are watching the games. They're sitting in class and they're just like watching the outcome. I shared in the last session, there was a kid at University of Louisville who actually came up to me after a session and said, listen, I think I just want to talk to you. I just lost $3,700, whatever it was, $3,500 in 37 minutes in class. Day trading. He's so preoccupied with the day trading. He's failing his class. He's losing money. He shows up late for practice. He goes back to his car, got a speeding ticket in the parking lot, and almost hit a pedestrian. 5 things. And this kid was asking, does he have a problem? And I said, well, I think you want to have a conversation with someone who can help you. I said, I think you have a lot of risky behaviors that you're engaging in right now that need to be flushed out. And that's where we have to be careful. We have to make sure that we're letting people know what the risks are. We have to understand that teenagers are also emotionally volatile. We know that. When my son is throwing a Kindle across the room, that's not normal. I love these viral videos of someone smashing a TV set. It's like impulse. Or are they doing it for clicks and views? That's the other thing we have to kind of consider as well. Okay? When you hear a lot of wager conversation, what's the line today? This game's a lock. I'm going to make a lot of money. These are things we're listening for. How many of you have heard this talk amongst high school teens let me, yeah, you have, right? Let me ask you a question. So in the work that you both do in the back there, are we primarily substance use, drug and alcohol? 60-40. Have you noticed a shift in any of the concern of people in recovery from drug and alcohol sliding over to sports betting now that it's legal in the state?
Honestly, I'm embarrassed to say that we haven't, until we actually got, I think, the same grant that she's referring to. We have included the survey in the assessment and in the screening process and in the biopsychosocial, and then we've done some advertisements, but we haven't collected that information until just recently. So, I mean, we have seen it, but it's not something that's extremely pronounced.
Got it.
Because we didn't ask.
Yeah, good point. I appreciate that. Like, if we don't ask, we don't know. The other thing I realize from surveys and instruments that we ask questions, sometimes we'll ask questions about gambling, but we don't quantify what gambling constitutes. And I realized that was leading to some lower numbers. So for any survey I ask, I say, for the purpose of this next question, gambling is risking anything of value in hopes of winning value where there's risk or uncertainty. That includes sports betting, daily fantasy sports, bingo. You go through the list of things that are gambling-like activities. Because for people in recovery from substance, even the gambling-like activities can become problematic. Bitcoin, day trading, they're not gambling. Prediction contracts, they're not gambling, but it's gambling-like. So then we started adding all of those activities, the numbers went way up. And it's not because we're trying to say, okay, gambling's bad. It's just saying these could potentially be risky for you as a person in recovery from substance because you can get dopamine from these things, all of these things. Like there was a season of my life, even with eBay. I was racing triathlon for 18 years, and I wanted to get a new triathlon bike. And so eBay is a great spot to get that. I found a bike that I liked in North Carolina, but my sponsor said, you can't bid on that. He said, you got to be careful. He goes, if you bid on it, you have to see, are you preoccupied? Are you checking that bid every minute, 2 minutes? Do you start to become preoccupied? I had a very strict sponsor. And so I didn't take his advice. Like he was giving me advice. He said, you can't do that. So in my brain, I'm like, well, damn it, I'm going to try it. You know, I'll be okay. I'll be the exception. Nope, Dan was not the exception. So I put the bid in, and then all of a sudden, I find myself trying to work, and I'm like, oh, let me just check that bid. Okay. And I was so distracted for the next 2 hours, I could not focus. So I canceled my bid. I didn't upbid it, and instead I did the buy it now feature. So I paid a bit more money, but I bought it outright because I was not equipped to handle that distraction. And that's what's fascinating about it. So even things like eBay and those types of things can become like retail therapy for people. Like it can become problematic, and for me, it started to.
Dan, something that's culturally relevant, you know, to my area where in eastern Kentucky is that recently we had where the FBI came in and took out what were referred to as the gray machines out of every gas station.
Oh, okay.
And
Skill-based? Yeah.
So what is changing is rooster fighting is coming back.
Oh, is it really? We saw that in New Jersey and some of the Dominican neighborhoods. Yeah.
Huge, and that's something where that teens are going with their dads.
Yeah.
It's a very close
Rooster fighting.
community.
Yep.
It's something that they can control. They know where it's at. I mean, it is organized betting.
Yep.
And teen fight clubs.
Oh, okay. And teen fight clubs.
Teen fight clubs are really big, and it's they're like showing them on TikTok. They're betting on them. It's really prevalent in eastern Kentucky.
Thank you for sharing that. And that's what's so important to realize is we talk about the emerging trends and growth of technology, but sometimes it's boots on the ground. It's cockfighting. It's teen fight clubs. Underground poker games, massive. And there were two freshman Texas student athletes. So they had graduated high school, and they were going to a college in Texas. I'm not going to say which one it was. And these kids got involved with underground poker games. And these guys who were running the poker game knew that they were student athletes at a school who had a good chance to start for their team. And so they invited him to start playing poker. And the kids said, okay, yeah, we want to play poker. And the guy said, don't bring any money, don't worry about it, we got you covered. So the kid's like, oh, this is nice. This guy's going to let us play for free. He's going to give us $5,000. Well, that happened the first time, and the kids lost. They got invited back the next weekend. They lost another $5,000. Mind you, these games were rigged. These kids were never going to win, okay? So now the third time they show up, the guy says, listen, you're down about $10,000, $12,000. You got to give us a little back so that we know you're good for it. And the kid said, well, I don't have the money. And the guy said, that's all right. We got two ways to solve this. First way, I need you to run drugs into Mexico for me. And the kid said, I'm not going to run drugs into Mexico. And the guy said, well, then I need you to fake an injury the next game. And when you fake an injury, that guy knew he was going to make a hell of a lot of money. So the kid ended up having to fake an injury. And what they found out later on through FBI investigation, through the DEA, is that this was part of a drug cartel that was organized in Texas that was going after college student athletes who they knew that they could compromise. Because oftentimes, if you come from a poor socioeconomic background and you're vulnerable, there are bad people out there that are take advantage of that. And that's one of the risks I see is that a month and a half ago, FBI announced that 39 college basketball players from 17 colleges were all busted for gambling, faking injuries, giving inside information. One of the young men went to Good Morning America and shared his story. He was from the University of New Orleans. And what he shared was, he's a college kid, 19 years old or so, had just had a baby girl. So now he's a college kid, has a newborn baby girl, and he grew up in a very poor parish in Louisiana. He did not have a lot. He did not want that little baby girl of his to start off the same way that he did. So he took $5,000 to fake an injury. He said, I know it was the wrong decision, but I just wanted to look out for my little girl. I get it. Like, I understand why he did what he did, but at the end of the day, he can't do that. And number two, people knew he was vulnerable, and they took advantage of his vulnerability, and they also put him in that situation, which was really, really crappy. So we see that happens a lot. So it's a really interesting dynamic. Couple other things. We see sometimes kids love betting West Coast. Like, I'm on New Jersey, so West Coast sports start really late. Obviously, you're just an hour time difference from us. So when we start to see kids betting, especially in high school or college, they're up late watching meaningless games. Like, why are you watching Hawaii play football? What's the purpose? Like, why does anyone watch the Cleveland Browns play football unless you got money on it? Like, there's no reason to watch certain sports unless you're betting on it. So when we start seeing a decline in grades, classroom participation, they're on their phones all the time. In New Jersey, they're going to actually be banning phones in the classroom starting next year. Does Kentucky have that rule? Is it in place now?
In ours, where my grandson goes to school, it is.
I don't know if it was a state or a county or, oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So New Jersey's going to be taking that next year, or no phones in the classrooms. You know, so that'll be very interesting. Other academic and social indicators of poor performance, again, missing assignments, social withdrawal and isolation, and also just carrying a lot of baggage. There was a story I told before that really moved me. Like I said before, you can't see gambling. You can't see people affected by gambling. It's also the friends and family members that we don't talk about enough. When we talk about addiction, we talk about the people struggling themselves, but we don't talk about the impact of the friends and family. When I was up at Merrimack College, there was a group that I was talking to. It was the dance team and the spirit squad, cheer and dance. And I'm asking about what are the behaviors that you start to see when someone has a gambling problem. You know, borrowing money, you know, bad attitude, mood swings, blah, blah, blah. One girl shares, she says they become delusional. I said, well, what do you mean by delusional? She said they promise you trips to Disney. They promise to buy you new sneakers for the first day of school. They promise you things, and they don't deliver. She goes, I hate my mom because she has a gambling problem. And that made me sad to hear that. The next girl says that she can't watch sports because her dad gets violent when he loses money and he abuses her mom. And she's scared of her father. And like, to hear those two stories just hit me right in the heart. And the teammates, their friends and peers did not know that these girls were carrying that around with them. They had no clue. And so immediately they were like, you could just see, I could see their faces because I get all the eyes. I could see the eyes, and these girls were just floored. So they got the support they needed because the coach had no idea, no athletics department had no idea that these girls were going through that. And that made me sad. And that's why we have to have the conversations across many facets. What does it look like? How do you help yourself? You know, I have family members who have children that are struggling with gambling, and they want so bad for their kid to get well, to get help, to get support. But if an individual doesn't want help or support, you can only do so much for them. You can point them to the resources, you can know the resources, but at the end of the day, they have to want it for themselves. And until that time, it's almost a helpless feeling at times.
I was just reading here, it says that intimate partner violence incidents go up 10.5 times when one of the other partners is a problem gambler.
Thank you for looking at 10.5 time of intimate partner violence. And that's scary, and that's sad. And I've heard that time and time again. When I used to work at 800 Gambler, the phone calls we'd get the day after the Super Bowl from a partner to say, yeah, you know what, last night didn't go so well. My husband drank a lot. And one time a woman calls me, the husband had thrown her through a wall because he was so pissed. She was just sitting next to him watching the game. Every year they watch the Super Bowl together. This year was different. He bet on the game, he was doing cocaine, he was drinking excessively, and he was losing his bet. And he kept saying, you're sitting too close to me, you're giving me bad luck. And she goes, what, you're acting crazy. What's wrong? Like, why are you acting like this? She couldn't wrap her brain around what he was saying. And he says, I told you, get away from me. And she was petite. He took her and threw her into the wall, right through the drywall, right in front of their kids. And she goes, do you think it was my fault? She thought it was her fault because that she made him have that outburst. So she called 800 Gambler. So we got her into some treatment and therapy to talk with a gambling counselor for friends and family, to understand the 3 C's, right? Gam-Anon teaches 3 C's. You can't cure it, you can't control it, and you can't cure, control. There's a third C. What the hell is the third C? Change. Might be change. Can't cure it, can't control it. It'll come to me. Can't change it, might be something along those lines. But from a family member's perspective, no, it's not your fault. It's not your fault at all. And for someone to think that's very scary as well. So, understanding that youth gamble, recognizing prevalence, understanding and having conversation at an early age is the best strategy for prevention. Having open conversation, being encouraging, compassion over comparison, like leaning in and letting the person know, hey, I know you and your friends gamble. If you ever want to talk about it, I'm here to listen. Like, let me help you understand. What is your understanding of sports betting? What is your understanding of parlays? Have conversations. There's resources out there for parents also to have those conversations. So we have to build a supportive community in the school. We need teachers to be aware. We need to have resources provided to teachers. We need to have staff training consistently, especially if we're working with young and emerging adults, people in recovery from substance use or other mental health disorders. Gambling is just all around us. It just has to be folded into the framework. And we have to ask the questions the right way. Because consistently, when I hear the phrase, I don't gamble, I just bet on sports, that means that if you ask a survey question, do you gamble? They're going to say, well, no. If it's sports betting, that's not considered gambling. So we have to make sure that we're always clearly defining what it is that we're talking about. Engage the families, engage the parents. Monitor bank accounts. If teenagers have debit cards, credit cards, bank accounts, those should have some restrictions or some joint parental controls on them. Ordering copies of credit reports once a year is a great strategy. And we need that more and more now. Even when our kids are 18 plus, get copies of those credit reports. Understand the probability of the big win versus the trade-off, which is the more likelihood, the real-world loss. The big win doesn't happen very often, but it's what's advertised on TikTok, on social media. I can't stand Drake. I'll tell you that right now. Because Drake has got stake where he gambles $1 million online and people think he's using his own money for that, and he's not. He's gambling with company money as an entertainment thing, but the way he showcases it, it makes people want to also gamble at that level. He celebrates the wins to such a level, he gets other people engaged. The promotion of big-time money wagering is a big problem. That's something. Dave Portnoy also is another one. He celebrates those big bets, 100%. And we have to be very careful. And that's why we have to engage, like understand consumption. What is the technology we're consuming? How is it being filtered? And are we having conversations around it? We want to always have healthy relationships. That's the one last thing I'll say, is that for me, life's about relationships, like I said before. We have to help people understand, what does a healthy relationship look like? What does unhealthy look like? And then that's where all the additional trainings come into play here. If we need resources, you got the Kentucky Council on Problem Gambling, the National Gambling Helpline, and also the Gam-Anon Gamblers Anonymous support groups. So, something I did not ask before, but I'm going to ask now. In this session, we move fairly quickly. It's already 4:15. I want someone, each of you, because it's an intimate group, give me something you took away. Give me a short 10 words or less, something you learned new, something you heard differently, something you didn't know before, something you found interesting, so that we can all learn from each other. And when you're done with that, I'm going to look up the 3 C's of Gam-Anon because...
Cause, control, cure.
Oh, cause. You didn't cause it, you can't control it, and you can't cure it. That's the big... You didn't cause it. It goes back to the point. It wasn't her fault. Right. Those are the 3 C's of Gam-Anon. Thank you very much. So, starting with you, something you learned to do. I took away cause, so that's what I learned. I forgot what cause. That's it.
You talking about how like when you would go, you do the numbers and the process. And
Yes.
the routine. And that, I guess I never really thought about like, scratch off a ticket, that's it. But I didn't realize there was, because there's so many routines around drugs and substance use, like no matter what it is, there's always a routine.
Yes.
I didn't realize that all types of gambling, troll dolls, but
Sports betting,
you
the
had a
horse
routine,
racing.
And that's
Yep.
part of the dopamine.
Yes, and thank you for pointing that one out.
Big part of the dopamine.
Yeah, my brother in recovery from alcohol, sitting at that same bar on a Friday night, holding the same right hand on the same bottle of non-alcoholic beer, but the entire routine was the same. And what we talked about in the first session was, in recovery, we can't push the stuff away from us. We get tired of pushing. We get tired of keeping things out of our life. We get tired. We have to create a new life where it no longer fits in. So it's nutrition, it's sleep, it's changing a lot of things that were in our life previously. Your recovery is not looking strong if you're doing the same mechanics and behaviors. The only thing different is what's in the glass. So you're right. The routines stay the same. Thank you so much. What's the takeaway from this one?
The fact that there is prevention programs that are available for teens if you could get into the door.
Yeah.
It's getting in the door.
We're making progress on that because 5-6 years ago it wasn't even a topic. And now all of a sudden we're starting to see more curriculum development, more stuff for teens, understanding how games work, emotional regulation, decision making. It's important and it's out there. It's just, it's a slow train that moves, and that's the frustrating part for me. It's moving too slow.
What surprises me is that for years, Kentucky, because we were a tobacco state, we had all this money for, that they had to do for prevention, to not smoke or dip, and they were in the schools.
Yeah.
But I don't understand the pushback on the early prevention for gambling when we're one of the most historic,
Yeah.
sports betting for the Derby and horse racing.
You're right. You're right. And what's the pushback? It gets down, and then it starts getting into legislative. It starts getting. So if we have someone maybe running for office in here, allocating more dollars towards prevention, education, and support, that would be my ask if I was a Kentucky resident. What did you have?
The connection that you talked about with the friends dying during 9/11.
Yeah.
And after that, and how that made you so much more vulnerable to something that you had comfort with your dad.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a safe thing. It was fun. So I went back to the things that gave me happiness and safety. And those are the things that I felt comfortable doing to escape life. I had friends that did drugs and drank excessively because that's how they coped. Instead, for me, it was gambling. Yeah, I wanted to feel good. Yeah, thank you for that.
I had a couple things come up this time. The one thing was just with prevention and how we encourage parents and guardians to start having conversations early and often to build that relationship. So they have those peer refusal skills when they're faced with substances, and just the emphasis on adding gambling into that conversation and actually defining what that is and making sure they know that can include sports betting and what it means on their phones and all of that. And then the other thing that I thought about towards the beginning of the presentation, you talked about historical horse racing, and that's kind of a newer term that I'm learning about because we just had a gaming event center open up the end of February near one of our lakes, so that's going to be interesting.
Yeah. Do a little bit more research on that, just how they use historical races and they build them into casino-style games. And it's just another way of getting entertainment and spending money on a risky outcome. Yeah, thank you for that.
we're so good about that don't do drugs, don't do alcohol, you know, and they get all that information, but not gambling, you know?
Yeah.
And being able to identify what gambling actually is. It's typical, it's, you know, bingo on a Thursday night or whatever it looks like, so.
Even
Trying that.
even asking the teens, like if you were to like even ask teenagers, like if you start showing them logos like without names, like what logo is this? And you show them like a DraftKings logo, the amount that kids recognize, like they recognize brand. Like brand recognition's big. And so you can start picking out, that's FanDuel, that's MGM, that's DraftKings, that's whatever it is. And it's like all of a sudden they have a lot of knowledge of gambling companies because of advertising. So they're getting it trickled into their brain whether they realize it or not. And that's the first step. Because remember, marketing is designed to motivate a consumer to do something. And over time, that's what they're going to see. So they're going to attach that with, oh yeah, that's DraftKings. And I've normalized spending money on video games with an uncertain outcome. So, well, let me just go to this next step, right? You normalize it early, and now you have brand recognition. So thank you for that. What was your takeaway?
My kids are still pretty young, so I just didn't realize it was so prevalent in high school and stuff. Loan sharks in high school, like that.
Yeah.
And then also the psychology of the near miss.
That dopamine feels good. Almost win, the near miss. Yeah, the near win.
I think just like most of them, just the awareness of the risky behaviors that we're seeing, the list they put together that is connected to gambling.
Yeah.
Like you said, we see drugs and alcohol, other things with our kids, but we never, usually I'm glad that we are starting to look for that and add that in with the treatment and prevention.
Good. Thank you. Appreciate that.
I didn't know what a racino was.
I love that. You know what? You're right, and I appreciate that. So thank you for that. Racetrack Casino. Any takeaway?
Absolutely. I appreciated you changing their perception of the problem so that we can identify behaviors outside of the problem.
Awesome.
Most of them mentioned.
Awesome. I appreciate that because oftentimes people say, oh, I have a gambling problem and I have an alcohol problem. Sometimes that's your solution to a deeper problem. And let's always remember that. That, you know, and I referenced this before, you know, we talk about songs like Midland. People say I got a drinking problem. I got no problem drinking at all. They call it a problem. I call it a solution, right? So these are the things, like for me, gambling was the solution to my problem of dealing with September 11th. I didn't think I had a problem at all gambling. I could gamble with no problem all day long with the best of them. It was a problem, right? So I appreciate it. Thank you all. I wish you all a good weekend. Anyone online that had a question? No, perfect. Listen, I thank you all. Good to be here. Enjoy your weekend. I will not be here tomorrow. Yes.